Be our guest. Be our guest. Put our service to the test.
Okay, I'm gonna die.
Moving Wisconsin forward, one joke at a time. This is Kristin Brey with As Goes Wisconsin.
Yada, yada, yada.
Hello, Wisconsin. Happy Tuesday. Hello, Wausau, Wisconsin Rapids, Richland Center, Amory, Oshkosh, Waukesha.
Is that everybody?
And Madison tonight.
Oh yeah, Madison tonight.
Madison tonight.
Nice.
Jane McNair, how are you doing?
I am well, thank you. How about yourself?
I am also well. I busted out the heavy winter coat because I am a wuss. And when we moved this summer, we used to have a yard, like a fenced in yard where we could put the dog out in the winter and not have to actually take him for a walk.
Which is so lovely.
We do not have a fenced in yard anymore. And so it's been very nice just to walk him around the block because he's a little dog, so we don't need to go for a long walk. But it's starting to clip at the heels of that cold of what it's going to be like walking him at 7 a.m. when it's 10 degrees outside. Luckily, he's a Texas dog, so he doesn't like the cold either. So hopefully he'll just do his business and we can go back inside pretty quickly.
Sometimes you gotta get a little movement going though. They gotta go at least halfway around the block.
That's true. You gotta move things around a little bit.
To get things moving, as it were.
All right. Well, we have a great show today. I'm very excited. We have another candidate on because it is 20 days until the election. It is exactly 3 weeks. Deborah Davis, who is in the Muskego area for Assembly District 82, will be here at 12 o'clock. And then for the 1 to 2 hour, my good friend Josh Burstein, who is a OG Wisconsin campaign digital guy who is now, for now, I should say, left politics and is strictly doing comedy. But he still has deep roots in making creative, effective videos during campaign season, specifically in Wisconsin. He's going to be here from 1 to 2, and we're going to talk about if comedy can save the world in this thing that we do.
If it can't, what's the point?
And then in between then, it's just you and I talking about some issues of the day. Actually, but tomorrow I want to plug this quickly because tomorrow... we have Greg Bach will be here because it is Greg Bach Hump Day Wednesday.
Yes.
And if you've been listening to the show, 2 weeks ago when we did the Roast of Milwaukee and I was the host of that, one of the highlights of the show was comedian Ryan Mason, who did a hilarious satire and impersonation of Ron Johnson. Apparently he can also do a Tony Evers impression.
He is very talented.
So he is going to join us for tomorrow, and he's going to answer the questions you wish they would have answered during the debate. So if you have a question that you really wish Tony Evers or Ron Johnson would have answered during last week's debates, 844-967-2789. That's 844-96-PARTY. Text us your questions and we'll write them down and we'll ask them live tomorrow to Ron Johnson and Tony Evers. In quotations. So definitely maybe a fun one to watch on the live stream. But we'll see how much he potentially tricks people because he's pretty good.
Is that good?
He's pretty good. So I'm really excited for that tomorrow.
What time is he going to be here?
He's going to be here from 1 to 1:45. He may just stay for the whole hour, but we'll definitely laugh tomorrow, which I'm excited about.
Oh, we usually do on Wednesdays.
We usually do. We laugh a little bit every day.
We do. That's true.
We try to.
That's the goal.
So I caught wind. Well, yesterday I always love talking to Steve Scafidi. I mean, he's truly, while we don't agree on everything, we probably could have talked for the full 3 hours yesterday had he been able to come for the whole show. But one of the things we talked about that I still think is this unknown part of polling and elections and what's like what we can expect after election night 3 weeks from now. And part of it, I think, is obviously the unknown as far as how many women are going to show up who are still motivated by the fact that we have a criminal abortion ban in Wisconsin right now. But I'm also interested in the amount of people who are Republicans, identify as Republicans, have voted Republican for most of their lives. But this is our first major election since January 6th, and people denying the election, and how many election deniers are running up and down the ticket, both in Wisconsin and across the country.
There's a bunch of them.
And the amount of Republicans who either won't vote for Republican candidates, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they will vote for Democratic candidates. They may just not vote in those races and vote down ballot and for different positions, or they actually do vote for a Mandela or Tony because they just can't get on board with this democracy bending rhetoric. And so I got caught in this new PAC. So we talked a couple of weeks about a Republican PAC against Trumpers and the money going into, this is from Sarah Longwell, who's part of the Bulwark, lifelong Republican, never Trumper, has this new PAC that is running ads in different states, including Wisconsin, against election denier candidates. So we talked about that, but then I just found out about this other PAC that's business leaders. And specifically, they're running a ad in Wisconsin right now with Wisconsin business leaders. And let's just play the ad, and then I'll give more detail on what the 10-point questionnaire was that they sent to both Tony Evers and Tim Michels, because I have that as well.
We're job creators, Republican and Democrat alike.
We know that a vibrant economy needs a healthy democracy.
So, we asked both Tim Michels and Governor Evers
Directly, whether they'd accepted the 2020 election results,
Whether they'd respect your vote.
even if it doesn't go their way,
whether they pledged to certify our state's 2024 vote
and if they would let the unbiased Elections Commission do its work.
without partisan attacks.
Governor Evers said yes,
But Tim Michels refused to answer.
at a time when the threats to the sanctity of the vote are as dangerous as ever. Tim Michels' refusal is wrong. I have never voted for a Democratic governor before, and this will be the first time. This will be the first time that I have voted for a Democrat for governor.
This November, I'm voting for Governor Evers.
I'm voting for Governor Evers.
Because I'm voting for our democracy, for our economy, and our country.
Project Democracy is responsible for the content of this advertising.
So the PAC is called the Project Democracy PAC, and it's a federal political action committee that supports pro-democracy candidates and incumbents from both sides of the aisle. And in Wisconsin, everyone featured in that ad, so it's the kind of preface for it: Republican and Democratic business leaders unite. Businesses thrive in stable democracies. Our PAC is airing an ad featuring Wisconsin business leaders urging a vote for Governor Evers because he is the only candidate who pledged to protect democratic rights, institutions, and norms in Wisconsin. The ad featured David Irwin and Anup Prakash, who are two Republican executives in Wisconsin who, as they said in the ad, never voted for a Democrat for governor prior to this election. And we can put this on the blog for people who want to check it out, but basically they sent this letter, and they published the letter it's on a Squarespace page. They sent it on September 26th to both Governor Tony Evers and Tim Michels, and there's a letter saying why they care about democracy and how this democracy helps with the economy and creating jobs and increasing wages and all the things that we talk about when we talk about a good, strong economy. And then they said, we are asking you, the two major candidates for Wisconsin governor, to join us in pledging support to 10 fundamental tenets of democracy and democratic elections that have served our state for generations. So this is the pledge. If I can get through it before we have to go to break.
We got 3 minutes.
All right. Wisconsin gubernatorial candidate pledge. I pledge to respect voters' freedom to exercise their lawful rights to register and vote, free from interference, obstruction, and intimidation. Makes sense.
That seems reasonable.
Number 2, I pledge to encourage a peaceful election atmosphere during the pre-election, polling, counting, and post-election periods.
Very important.
Very important. Number 3, I will cooperate with election officials, adhere to rules and regulations, and refrain from knowingly propagating falsehoods about the electoral process.
Ooh, I can see that being difficult for someone.
Number 4, I pledge to denounce any attempt to intimidate, harass, threaten, or incite violence against opponents, their supporters, and election workers.
Also seems important.
Yeah. Number 5, I pledge to encourage political parties and others to train poll watchers on the election process and appropriate roles and behaviors, responsibilities, and obligations. Number 6, I pledge to make any claims of election irregularities in full accordance with the law and acknowledge the legitimacy of the outcomes after the results have been certified and all legal contests resolved. 7, I pledge to accept the outcome. I pledge to accept the outcome of the 2022 Wisconsin gubernatorial election once results are verified by the Wisconsin Election Commission and any valid legal challenges have run their course. Seems important.
It does.
8, I pledge to veto any measures approved by the legislature to decertify the 2020 presidential election results in Wisconsin.
Wow, these seem shockingly specific.
Number 9, I pledge to certify the winner of the 2024 presidential election, whomever it is, after the results are verified by the Wisconsin Election Commission and all valid legal challenges resolved. And finally, I pledge to veto any measures approved by the legislature that would politicize election administration in our state, including efforts that would limit the oversight role of the Wisconsin Election Commission by giving more power to political actors. And they sent this to both candidates.
Tim Michaels and Tony Evers.
And Tim Michaels did not respond.
At all?
He did not respond.
Oh, busy.
And Tony Evers did. I think even in the debate on Friday, that the similar line of questioning of, will you accept the election results? And Tim Michaels kind of skirted around the answer.
Well, he kind of skirted around it. All the answers.
That's fair. That's fair. But I haven't seen this commercial on anything yet. I just saw it's on their website, and it felt like that should be pretty fundamental
and impactful.
Yeah.
When you sent me the link this morning, and I hadn't seen it before this either, I was kind of blown away by that and surprised.
And there's something, because I've been watching. We got to go to break. We'll talk about it when we come back. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Stay with us.
You'll prop your feet up, but for now let's eat up. Be our guest, be our guest, be our guest, please be our guest.
Hi, everyone. Listen to my show, The Matt McNeil Show, weekday afternoons at 3 p.m. on the Shaw 101. 1 hour every weekday where we'll talk all sorts of things like politics, especially with what's going on this election season, plus a lot of other things, too. Parenting, the arts, religion, music, beer. If it matters to Wisconsin and Minnesota, we'll talk about it. Phone calls are welcome at 952-946-6205. For 1 hour each day, come see the train chimp, The Matt McNeil Show, with the aggressive progressive Matt McNeil, 3 p.m. weekday afternoons right here on the Shaw 101.
President Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election.
Collectively, Republicans got 1.661 million votes, 51,000 more votes than Trump got.
He exhausted his cases. He exhausted the court challenges.
All the Republicans voted for Trump the way they voted for the assembly candidates. He would have won.
It was not rigged. It was not stolen. Donald Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election. It's really clear.
This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at p4ppc.org.
It's the Max Inc. Halloween Spooktacular, live from the Wisco Bar and Grill in Madison. Come meet rocker Terry Barr and yours truly, Jimmy K, as we broadcast live 6 to 9 p.m. Then, after 9, live music featuring Bron Scorpion and Bertha Tragedy. Oh, and rockers band Iron Plow is playing too. What are the odds? The Max Inc. Halloween Spooktacular, Saturday, October 29th at the Wisco, 852 Williamson Street in Madison. Join us or I'm going to throw eggs at your house.
On the Shaw. Cloudy this afternoon with a high of 42. Winds out of the northwest, 20 to 25 miles an hour. Overcast skies tonight. Lows dip down to about 30. Mainly sunny skies tomorrow. Daytime highs approaching 44. A blend of clouds and sun Thursday with daytime highs approaching 52. 65 Friday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Derek Height. Currently, it's 37 degrees.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. As always, you are welcome to join the conversation. 844-967-2789. That is 844-96-PARTY. And choose a text. Always happy to take your calls. What was I talking about?
We were talking about the new ad featuring a lot of Republican business owners in Wisconsin.
Oh, I know what I was going to say.
Okay.
With so many of the ads that are going out right now between the governor and the Senate race, you know, they have people as, and I don't know, like, I don't think they're all actors, but there's people who are supposed to be just representative of women who are worried about abortion or worried about crime or worried about inflation, and people who are, or I think some are law enforcement officers, and it's like the average Wisconsinite talking straight to you. And there was something about that commercial, the PSA that we just played in the last segment, that felt less actory,
a little more genuine.
Well, and they have their names there, right? They're actually putting their name on it. They're business leaders, CEOs of Wisconsin companies, but it felt a little bit more genuine, and maybe it's because the writing was better. Because I will say, as an actor, even when you're a really good actor, bad writing is bad writing.
You can't make a bad line a good line.
And that's like for the poor soap opera actors who are also very good actors, but it's just, they film those every day, and you have to pump out those scripts, and it's the epitome of done is the enemy of perfect is the enemy of done, and so you just have to keep going. But I don't know. It's a powerful commercial. I hope that it's getting some traction as far as where it's running. It'd be interesting to see where they've decided to run it versus like between television, YouTube ads, et cetera, and who they're trying to reach with that commercial.
I sure hope it hits TV. I think it's a good listen, but I think it's really impactful to see these people.
Yeah,
I think that makes a difference.
And we'll share it I'll probably share it from our social media, but also on our blog on asgoeswisconsin.com. But this is not breaking news, but we haven't talked about it on the show yet. But Obama is coming. The Hail Mary. The Hail Mary. Don't boo, vote. October 29th, I think, is the day he's going to be here. So not this Saturday, but the following Saturday.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's going to be some kind of early voting event.
In Milwaukee.
Is it in Milwaukee?
Let me find out.
We'll get the information, but he is coming. He's coming. I think he's also going to Michigan, and I think he's also going to Pennsylvania. And, you know, this is a man who won by large margins both times. Granted, it was 10 years ago. I mean, the last time he was elected was exactly with this time 10 years ago. So the world is definitely different now, but I think as far as political figureheads go, he's still pretty popular. And I don't know. Let me text us right now if this would make a difference. If like getting to see Obama and have the opportunity, does this motivate you more to vote than you were before? I will say somewhere inside of me, because I've never met him, there is a part of me that's like, I kind of want to go to that event and like the opportunity to meet him.
Yeah.
And even, and so that's probably that is the effect that they're going for, right? Is people who are still, I mean, how many candidates did we have on that when we do our speed round, we've asked, who do you want to meet dead or alive? I think we had at least 3 people say Obama.
I agree.
That are still on their high on their list as far as people that they look up to. And what's funny though is having the conversation of arguably his biggest failing was that he didn't do more of this when he was actually president. And more of this being campaigning, building a bench, advocating for more up and coming Democrats,
being a little more of a mentor.
Not even more of a mentor, but more of the, we talk about in Wisconsin, like, how you recruit good candidates to run in the first place, how they get the experience and the exposure that they need to run for higher office. And it's not like when that big tide of state legislatures in 2010 during the Tea Party, during his first term happened, and so many, including Wisconsin, turned red, and then that happened to fall inside the same year as redistricting and the census, and then a lot of these state legislatures for 10 years were gerrymandered.
Locked up nicely.
And some of that is pointed to the fact that in that first midterm, he wasn't necessarily great at securing and advocating for down ballot across the country. And now, obviously, she's showing up, and he'll be here. He'll be in other swing states, and we'll see if it makes a difference. I don't know how you measure that, but he's coming. The Hail Mary is coming.
Do you think there are that many independents? Because I have to assume that it's independents and possibly some Republicans who haven't decided yet.
I don't know if it's independents. This feels like an opportunity to potentially get people excited who may have otherwise not voted. Because they're still enamored by him. Because I think there's worry of the energy levels of young people, of Milwaukee in general, that sometimes, I mean, look, we only had 33% people turned out.
Yeah, it was pathetic.
For the mayor's race, which was the first time it was a competitive, I mean, both the primary and the actual general election for mayor when Mayor Chevy Johnson won. But it was not a great turnout. And so the apathy levels in Milwaukee may mean that there's low turnout. So if he comes to Milwaukee and there's still a bunch of people who otherwise may not been paying attention but are excited about him being here, maybe that's, so I think it's less about changing minds but more about motivating, I think.
Lighting a fire.
But what do I know?
As it were.
What do you think? Does this change your mind? Does this get you fired up knowing that Obama's coming? 844-967-2789. We're going to break. We'll be right back. This is Ask Goes Wisconsin.
A progressive voice from Manitowoc to Janesville. WAUK 540 AM. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
So all you folks out there, if you haven't registered to vote, register to vote, get ready to vote. There are so many things on the ballot this November at our freedom, our liberty, and our way of life. But we'll get to all of that this evening.
The Paul Revere Show with Mark Thompson. Listen Mondays 7 to 8 p.m. on the Shaw 101 FM and WAUK 540 AM. The Devil's Advocates Radio Show.
Hey, Joe, what do you got for us today?
In reference to Lindsey Graham, I was amazed at his comments where he said if Trump is indicted, there will be riots in the streets. Lindsey Graham was a JAG officer, and in order to be a JAG officer, you have to pass the bar. Was a JAG
I'm sorry, you said JAG-off officer? I didn't quite understand that.
Yeah, to see a lawyer head for the rat hole instead of acting like a person with a backbone. Wow, what a profile in courage, huh?
Monday through Friday.
I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. Russia continues to target key energy infrastructure in Ukraine.
9-year-old Artem Panchenko helps his grandmother stoke a smoky fire as she prepares a meal outside their home in the southern region of Kharkiv. The light is falling fast and they need to eat before the sun sets and they're plunged into darkness. Artem is not looking forward to another night without heating. It's really cold. I'm sleeping in my clothes in my apartment. In a nearby village, Viktor Palyanitsa chops wood to prepare for the worst. I have arms and legs, so I'm not scared of the cold because I can find wood and heat the stove. More recent Russian strikes in Kiev and elsewhere that have targeted power plants have added to the general sense of foreboding about the coming winter. I'm Karen Chamas.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said nearly a third of Ukraine's power stations have been destroyed in the past week, causing massive blackouts. I'm Ed Donahue.
We tried Dynovite nutritional supplement, and after a couple of weeks, we noticed a big difference. Our little Gizmo's coat was shinier, and there was a lot less scratching and shedding.
My dog smelled and scratched constantly. We bathed and sprayed her, took her to the vet, but no results. Now, a little Dynovite in her food helps Bella keep her beautiful coat with no scratching or smell.
Happier, healthier with every bite. Over 1 million pets helped with Dynovite.
Hi, this is Joe Cordell with the law firm Cordell & Cordell. When the prospect of divorce becomes a reality, you need a partner that you can count on. If you're a man in this situation, consider contacting Cordell & Cordell. We've helped men navigate complex legal matters for 30 years.
Contact Cordell & Cordell to schedule an appointment with one of our firm's Atlanta area attorneys. 404-793-0000. Online at CordellCordell.com. 1 Glen Lake Parkway Northeast, Suite 975, Atlanta, Georgia 30328.
For Civic Media, I'm Jane Matnier with your headlines. The tight race for Wisconsin's U.S. Senate seat has seen an influx of fundraising, with Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes' campaign outraising Senator Ron Johnson by nearly $8 million between July and October. According to the Federal Elections Commission quarterly reports, between July 21st and October 30th, Mandela Barnes for Wisconsin raised $19.5 million, while Ron Johnson for Senate Incorporated raised $11.6 million. The numbers don't include outside spending by political action committees, which advertising analytics firm Ad Impact estimates nearly $150 million will be spent on this Senate race alone. According to Open Secrets, outside groups have spent over $35 million on ads opposing Barnes and over $27 million in ads against Johnson. You're listening to the Shaw 101 FM WAUK 540 AM.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin, Brey. How do you make the budget sexy?
That's a really good question.
Like, and I know, this is a question most comms people, I think, across, what the things that actually, whether it's journalists or comms directors or politicians, of the magnitude of what the surplus is and how much it matters. And I just don't know how to talk about this without eyes glazing over.
Well, I think the part of the problem is people don't give it a second thought until a service that they're used to is no longer there.
Maybe.
Right? It just seems like such a distant, it seems like such a distant thing. It's in Madison, it's the state budget, it's cumbersome and complicated, and I don't want to have to think too much about that.
Maybe. So we've talked a fair amount about this as far as our surplus. We've talked about shared revenue, and Wisconsin just ended its fiscal year with a record $4.3 billion budget surplus.
Billion with a B.
Billion with a B. It is, when we say record, it is, this is unprecedented. This is an unprecedented amount of money that we have. And with a surplus of this size, state leaders could make huge changes. So we could overhaul our tax system, tax cuts. We could overhaul the way schools are funded. We could make investments into infrastructure. We could help, ensure that the state is just more financially stable in general. We could increase our shared revenue. Like, there is tons of things that need funding. We're also dealing with inflation. So how much would a tax cut help people out right now? Is there ways to do tax credits for people, like the child care tax credits, paid leave? Like, there's a ton of different stuff we could actually do.
Well, how about fixing the unemployment system, which everyone was screaming about 2 years ago with COVID and how long it took, and certainly people were in dire straits, but there was lots of finger pointing going on about that not being fixed.
And I feel like there was some movement on that. And because I feel like I remember at some point they were bringing in like ex-Google employees to look at the problem. But yeah, you talk about an issue that was so huge, and now no one's really talked about. And But really, obviously it matters because whoever's in the assembly and the state senate make a budget, their priorities also matter. But ultimately, the governor signs the budget. And so whoever wins the governor's race next month is going to have a once in a generation opportunity to use this amount of money and potentially transform the state, right? Like this is, and there's so many things that feel like a big deal, but this specifically, and I don't know how to talk about it and make it resonate with people to understand that this is probably not going to happen again as far as us having this much money.
This big of a cushion.
And elections matter because we're electing people to decide how to use that money. And it's not as, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people do, like maybe we keep talking about it, people do recognize it and understand that this is a big deal. And you're choosing to elect people to figure out how to spend that money and prioritize different things that potentially feel broken, considering how many different school districts have referendums on their ballot because they don't feel like they're adequately funded, whether it's municipalities that are cutting their budgets because they don't have enough shared revenue or enough different revenue streams to bring in to pay for police, EMT, fire, libraries. And so some of this money could really help them out if we were actually to rethink how we do shared revenue. There's so many different things that could really make an impact, and we don't get to directly vote on that. The only way we have a say in how we want this money to be spent or what we could prioritize and do with this is who we vote into office.
And that is also the same for permitless concealed carry, right? We can't vote directly on that. We had an advisory referendum, and certainly all the polling shows that this is not something that Wisconsinites support. But this is up to the governor, who's going to be in the governor's mansion. Tony Evers has blocked that from happening. If Tony Evers weren't there, we would already have permitless concealed carry in Wisconsin.
Yeah, but but that is an issue that I feel like is similar to because I'm trying to think about how do you the things that are guttural and people really like get fired up over, and I think it's the top issues, right? It's crime, it is abortion, it is gun rights, either gun rights versus gun control. And bringing it back to this topic, like this feels less sexy despite how important it is. And so I would love to hear from you as far as does hearing that number, $4.3 billion, and the once in a generation opportunity of what we can do with that money or not do, if that's where you fall on this, does that move you at all when it comes to voting whatsoever and who you vote for? Knowing that I feel like this is a thing that, while so important, just gets glossed over as people are picking headlines of what they want to read, if it's the paper, or watch if it's the news. But it feels like I don't know how to make it sexier. You know what I'm saying? Like, does this, like, if I wasn't spending 15 minutes on a segment right now, is this something that would stop you and be like, oh man,
I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
Again, I don't think people think about that very much unless their garbage isn't getting picked up or the roads aren't getting plowed, and even then it's going to be more looking at the local government and their inability to provide those services instead of going back to the state and the whole shared revenue. Don't you think talking about I've never heard the topic shared revenue discussed so much before.
Until you started this show?
just in general, I think in the last year, year and a half, it's become much more part of the lexicon. And I think it's important for people to understand what that means. And I think you're doing something valuable by explaining it.
Well, yeah, and it's just this feels really important. And but it's interesting because you think about the ads that we're just drowning in right now, and what do they focus on in the ads? And it's all, these things get tested. There's all these focus groups as far as how do you feel about XYZ candidate before you watch this commercial? Now they watch the commercial. How do you feel after? And so before they put all of this money behind running these ads again and again and again and again, they test them. They get the reaction. And so clearly there's certain topics that rile people up more. And those are the topics that we're seeing again and again and again on these ads. So
Right.
From the Republican side, it's inflation, crime, cash bail, parole. What else are we seeing as far as the
Immigration?
And then obviously from the other side, we have from Democrats and their ads. It's a lot of abortion. It's some gun control. But like this never pops up in a political ad.
Let's sit down and talk about shared revenue.
Or like the amount of money
like
the amount of money that the state is sitting on, even though this is part of where so many priorities will actually get decided. It's like this, by deciding how to spend this money is an indicator of what you find important in the state and how we solve problems, and whether that's a tax cut, whether that's funding schools, whether that's fixing roads. Like there's so many different ways we could be spending this, and who's in charge is going to just make those decisions. And I'm going to keep talking about it, but I'm also interested if there is a more creative way to talk about it that makes it feel more urgent.
I don't know, unless we put a Halloween costume on it.
It's true.
And get a push-up bra. I'm not sure how we make the state budget surplus.
Push-up bra really doesn't help me.
It might help the state budget. We haven't tried. I don't know.
Or we could bring back what we talked about yesterday with the Jell-O filled balloons. Maybe that one.
I'm here for you, Madison. Anytime you need, I am here for you.
I did do one video back when the last budget negotiations were happening. So that would have been winter, like February, March, I think, of 2021. And I did it was Canned Heat, the Jamiroquai song.
Yeah.
And I just did a whole video of me dancing with then there was just like text of what was in Tony Evers' proposal of what he wanted to prioritize. And this was before the legislature then had their budget, and then because it ended up not getting signed off on until the end of the summer, I think, and that was when Governor Evers did the switcheroo, and he went from proposing like $1 billion in spending, so they would increase taxes on some of the wealthiest Wisconsinites, so to then by the budget that he ended up signing, everyone got a tax cut. And so he played politics well on that, as far as like, all right, you guys proposed this, I'm going to sign it, and then I'm going to take credit for it because I'm the one who signed it. And then all the Republicans in the state legislature were so angry that they're like, well, he really changed his tune, like blah blah blah. This is what they were so mad that he took credit for those tax cuts,
which is hilarious because that's all Republicans have done since President Biden signed the infrastructure bill.
Yeah.
I mean, and they're going back to their constituents and saying, look at the money I got for you, even though we all voted against it.
Yeah, exactly. But so at one point, I think someone who works at one of the policy organizations in Wisconsin, when I put that video out there, like, I never thought about this as a strategy to try to get people interested in the budget. I mean, just goofy dancing to Canned Heat for a minute and a half.
I think you're onto something there. I think you could do a state budget dancing TikTok with no
words,
words,
just me looking like an idiot,
and a script going past. I think there's potential there.
There's maybe potential there.
Brooke is right next to you. Our social
say,
media.
Brooke, would the youths like that? Yeah. She says
the
yes.
The youths would go for that.
The youths, the Gen Z. I don't need a pusher brush. She said, do I need makeup? No make. That gets into a different topic entirely than the budget. But I do think that there's something interesting as far as when we talk about pop culture and millennials versus Gen Z, that there is this idea of millennials online and how made up and how good we feel like we have to look versus Gen Z has no problem with no makeup, doesn't need like their outfits, and just like is so comfortable talking to a phone and like a camera wherever they are, and it feels so much more authentic than those of us who are like, I need my ring light. And so that's a totally different topic that we'll save for a different day when we have our resident young person teach us what the youths care about. But I think that is an interesting topic as far as trying to make these issues palatable, digestible, because ultimately when we have conversations around pointing the finger on crime, pointing the finger on inflation, and not a ton of solutions of how you would actually go about solving those things, how you prioritize and choose to spend this kind of money is how you fix some of those things. And so having conversations about, we have this surplus, what would you do with it? And really, that is the most tangible, direct thing that we can expect, especially the governor, to have a plan on. And how do you want him to spend it? I think that's who should get your vote. All right, we're gonna take a break. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
You've waited 12 years for this, but you just didn't know what the flavor was going to be. Nothing has tasted quite right up until now. Sometimes it tasted dumb, crazy, or even seditious, but now it tastes just right. Introducing Mandela Mash, a legit lager. This beer won't embarrass you in public. It comes in an aluminum can, not a tinfoil hat, and it was made in America, not Russia. With a clean finish, the taste doesn't lie. Mandela Mash, the only sane choice for U.S. Senate. Available only in Wisconsin. Go to MinocquaBrewingCompany.com to find where you can buy this fresh new flavor of American democracy.
Who doesn't love laser tag? iCombat gives you that and so much more. It's a real-life video game experience. iCombat's perfect for birthday parties, special events, corporate team building, or just blasting away at your friends. iCombat at 1023 Spring City Drive off Sunset. For more info, go to iCombatWaukesha.com. iCombat is a proud sponsor of the Black Shirt Football radio broadcast. Gear up, squad up, prepare for iCombat laser tag.
We have a full hour with Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley.
Yes, thank you for having me. So glad to be in studio.
Listen Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.
You know, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, whether you are a union member or a business owner, picking up your garbage has no partisan lines. Making sure people can get to and from work shouldn't have partisan lines.
Listen to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey right here on The Shaw.
Forecast on the Shaw. Cloudy this afternoon with a high of 42. Northwest winds 20 to 25 miles an hour. Cloudy skies again tonight. Lows dip down to about 30. High temperatures reach up to 44. Tomorrow, mainly clear skies. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times Thursday, with daytime highs approaching 52. 65 Friday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 37 degrees.
If you want to comb your cat, there's an app for that. If you have to fix a flat, there's an app for that. Need a word that rhymes with gnat? Gnat. Or a place to hang your hat? Got a chimp who likes to chat? There's an app for that.
All right, Jane.
Yes.
Who is that? Who made that song?
That's from Sesame Street, Kristin Brey.
Really?
There's an app for that song.
That is, there you go.
Yeah.
That is great.
Yes.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. This is Kristin Brey, Jane Madnair, rounding out hour one. And speaking of an app for that, actually, before I ask you that, push the app that I want to push, do you have what is your favorite app that is like provides the most value in your life?
Does Twitter count?
Let's do just because those are obvious ones as far as like social media, but more of the like unique thing that you're like, well, I use this almost every day. And who would have ever known that I had an app for that?
My calendar.
All right. You got nothing more creative than that?
I don't. I wouldn't even know where to go look for fun apps or great apps.
So I
you go
have
to the app
one.
store, right?
You can go. Well, so since you have an Android, you'd go to Google Play. I go to the Apple store since I have an iPhone, and we're still friends, even though you have the green bubble.
And you so rarely mock me for that, which is lovely.
But I have one called Vivino, which is a wine app where you can take, like, you scan the label and it immediately pops up with what the score is, how much it should cost. And that's a very useful app, especially when
Wow.
you're sitting at Trader Joe's and you're like, is this $6 bottle of wine going to be drinkable? And then you can just use Vivino. And it's like, yes, it's not going to be the best thing you ever had, but like, it'll do.
I thought you were going to say, is this $6 wine palatable? And I'm sure it is.
I'm sure it is. Yeah.
Sure.
$2 chuck. Sometimes there's a good vintage year every once in a while.
Right.
And the other one is an app that I pay for called, especially now that I'm driving as much as I am.
Okay.
It's called Speechify, which will, using AI, reads text. So when there's a long article that I know that I want to be able to talk about on air, but instead of having the time to read it before I drive to Waukesha,
Mhm.
I will upload it into the app and then listen to it almost like a podcast.
Okay.
On my drive here. And so that's been very helpful.
I can see where that would be useful.
I'm trying to think. Those are probably the most unique ones that I use regularly. But the one that I use a lot these days,
I know, it's fantastic,
is the Civic Media app, which is the company that owns WAUK, Devil's Advocates Radio, Devil's Radio, sorry, which is what Devil Advocates started on, the show in the afternoon, Oshkosh, WFHR, basically the company that owns all of our little network of stations. It's called Civic Media. And if you download the app, whether it's in the Google Play Store or in the Apple Store, you can then choose between all of the different stations. So a show like ours, we're on all of the stations right now besides Madison, at least not live. Devil's Advocates, which is what I was just said, they're at from 4 to 6, all the stations. But each station also has more individual programming that you can only hear on that station.
Right.
So Morning Magazine and the morning show on WFHR in Wisconsin Rapids is just on that show. Pat Kreitlow in the morning, I think, is just on Wausau and Amory right now. So you can click between each of the stations to listen to whichever station you want. And you don't have to be in that region or that area. So people in the Fox Valley who now can hear us on a live transistor radio out of our Oshkosh station, could also listen to the Wausau station, even though they'd have to listen to it on the app instead of just the transistor radio.
And I know it just seems so generic now, and we're all so used to this. Just take a second and think about how cool that is. I mean,
especially,
seriously,
so you've done this for so long, and how much technology has changed in our accessibility to be so many places. Because I'm sure for most of your career, live radio was live radio, and if you missed it, you missed it.
That's right. It went out into the ether, never to be heard from again.
And now you can listen to it, even if people can listen to it and download the app and listen to it in California, right? And
Sure.
Obviously, if you're in your car and you're hearing this on the actual radio, that's great. But the fact that we not only have it, you can stream it at any given time, then you can also listen to it as a podcast. Because we post these, not only do we post the entire show every day, but we also cut out the interviews if you just want to listen to those interviews. And so anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, our show's there. All of the other shows are there from any of the Civic Media Network stations. And you can always go back and listen to David Crawley when he was on for that full hour. That was a great interview. You can listen to Carmen Petrie. We need a better job of posting those interviews once they're done so that people know to go check them out, because people are working sometimes in the middle of the day. Not always the easiest time to listen to our show live.
People have lives, and they're going grocery shopping, and they're at work, and they're having lunch, and all of those things. But like you said, it's a great way to check out what's going on in different parts of the state from your little part of the state.
Yeah.
And I've told you this off air, but now I'm enamored with Amory because I've never been there. And I'm going to go snoop on Amory now because I love them.
I'm so excited. I feel like that's a next summer girls trip.
Amory?
Yeah.
Oh, road trip. I'd love that.
Do a road trip.
Yeah.
And spend some time, like a week up there, and do our show from there and explore all the beauty and culture Northwest Wisconsin has to offer.
All that is Amory.
And we'll probably be open in Hayward by then too. So we can have two stops.
Nice.
But yeah. And so that is our major plug for the Civic Media app, which you should download. And when you are stuck somewhere and you can't find a good radio station, you can just turn that on.
Simple as that. It's so simple, even I have downloaded.
That is, and that is simple because,
yes.
I mean, your technical education in the last 4 months, I feel like, has really up and to the right.
Oh, yeah. It's been eye-opening and challenging, but in a really good way.
Yes.
And we've talked before about how it's important to do things that scare you, not things that necessarily put your life at risk, but things that intimidate you and things that you may not have jumped into before. And this has been a wonderful learning experience for me. Not to mention the fact that I'm watching videos that I have never seen before. In fact, I'm probably going to have to go lay down after the last one with Rod Stewart and Do You Think I'm Sexy? I need to wash that image out of my brain forever.
Forever. Is that your favorite part of the job so far, is finding bumper music that is
stupid? Yes, it gives me more joy than I could possibly even relay.
So this is probably, as we're plugging things right now, we might as well just plug the Spotify playlist that we have on Spotify that is different than the podcast, but it is all of Jane's music collected into one playlist. As far as you can go enjoy it. What is the name of the song that we just played?
It's there's an app for that from Sesame Street.
App. So if you want to go track down that song or any song you ever hear on our bumper music, you can find it. All right, we're going to take a break for the top of the hour news. And when we come back, Deborah Davis will be here.
Got a chimp who likes to chat. There's an app for that. If your butter needs a pat.
Hey, it's Pizza Box Mike. I've got a show outside the Pizza Box. Be sure to listen on Saturdays at noon on Devil Radio. There is a reason why they won't let me on Facebook anymore.
So all you folks out there, if you haven't registered to vote, register to vote, get ready to vote. There are so many things on the ballot this November at our freedom, our liberty, and our way of life. But we'll get to all of that this evening.
The Paul Revere Show with Mark Thompson. Listen Mondays 7 to 8 p.m. on the Shaw 101 FM and WAUK 540 AM.
We've all felt left out. And for people who move to this country, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
You are listening to WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W266 DR Waukesha, always streaming on the...
AP News. I'm Ed Donahue. British Prime Minister Liz Truss is scrambling to recover her grasp on power after her economic plans were ripped up. Owen Edershaw in London thinks Truss is on her way out.
I mean, it's got to be a matter of days at this point. I think we're basically the laughing stock of the entire world, as per usual.
Andrew Garman in London is trying to stay positive with the new Prime Minister.
However long she lasts, I enjoyed the fact that she showed humility. And there's so much arrogance in public life that to show somebody truly contrite, having screwed up, should be a lesson for us all.
Truss remains in office in Britain for now, largely because her Conservative Party is divided over how to replace her. The United Nations says millions of people in Ukraine are in dire need of humanitarian assistance.
This is about utter devastation
loss of life, and total loss of livelihoods in the areas directly impacted by the war.
UN humanitarian coordinator Denise Brown is worried as winter approaches in Ukraine.
We have, and of this I'm absolutely convinced, a high risk of mortality during the winter months with families and communities who have been left with absolutely nothing.
Recent Russian strikes have knocked out power in many parts of Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky said nearly a third of the country's power stations have been destroyed in the past week. South Korea says North Korea fired artillery shells near its sea border with South Korea, a day after the South began annual military drills to better deal with North Korean provocations. The South Korean military broadcast messages several times asking North Korea to stop the firing, but there were no reports of violence between the rivals. Federal authorities say they're trying to rescue more than 100 migrants stranded on an uninhabited island near Puerto Rico during a human smuggling operation. Stocks remain higher on Wall Street. This is AP News.
We tried Dynovite nutritional supplement, and after a couple of weeks, we noticed a big difference. Our little Gizmo's coat was shinier, and there was a lot less scratching and shedding.
My dog smelled and scratched constantly. We bathed and sprayed her, took her to the vet, but no results. Now, a little Dynovite in her food helps Bella keep her beautiful coat with no scratching or smell.
Happier, healthier with every bite. Over 1 million pets helped with Dynovite.
Hi, this is Joe Cordell with the law firm Cordell & Cordell. When the prospect of divorce becomes a reality, you need a partner that you can count on. If you're a man in this situation, consider contacting Cordell & Cordell. We've helped men navigate complex legal matters for 30 years.
Contact Cordell & Cordell to schedule an appointment with one of our firm's Atlanta area attorneys. 404-793-0000. Online at CordellCordell.com. 1 Glen Lake Parkway Northeast, Suite 975, Atlanta, Georgia 30328.
The Shaw 101 FM, your fix for progressive talk. From Butler to Wind Lake. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
Work, the kids' practices, household errands, seems like every hour's rush hour at our house. But no matter how busy things get, we still make balanced nutrition a priority with help from Country Hearth Natural Breads. Whole grains and other natural ingredients are carefully blended and baked into delicious, nutritious breads like Dakota-style 12-grain, multi-grain, and 100% whole wheat. There's a Country Hearth favorite for everyone in the family. Country Hearth Breads, baking our best for you.
This is Robert Pilot of Native Roots Radio presents I'm Awake. On our show, we talk about Native issues like treaty violations, protecting the water, and COVID in our Native communities. Native issues are human issues, and human issues are Native issues. We invite all people to walk hand in hand with us through our struggles, victories, and achievements. Join us weeknights from 6 to 7 p.m. Alliant Energy is a proud sponsor of Native Roots Radio.
Warning, listening to the Devil's Advocates may expose you to opposing views.
We've mentioned, inflation is going to be an issue. Let me ask you this. What would you like to see Donald Trump do if you were here? What did you suggest Biden do to address the inflationary pressures we're facing right now?
Well, I can't tell you that because that would be something you could counter and defeat Trump with or the Republican Party. So tell you.
You think Trump's taking strategy from you on talk radio, Lou?
I mean, you're no Kid Rock, Lou.
Follow the Devil's Advocates on Facebook and Twitter.
For Civic Media, I'm Jane Natnair with your headlines. With just weeks to go before the November election, millions of dollars are flowing into Wisconsin political races. Research from the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign found outside groups have already spent $36.7 million on legislative and statewide candidates. 9 groups have spent $1 million on races for governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, treasurer, secretary of state, and the legislature. GOP donors include Right Direction Wisconsin PAC, Americans for Prosperity, Fighting for Wisconsin, and Club for Growth Action. The Democratic groups include Better Wisconsin Together Political Fund and Wisconsin Conservation Voters Independent Expenditure Committee. The remaining groups include Freedom Wisconsin PAC, Wisconsin Freedom PAC, and Sunrise and America Political Fund. You're listening to The Shaw 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM.
Live programming for WAUK Radio 540 AM and 101 FM is produced right in the Shaw in beautiful downtown Waukesha, Wisconsin.
The Shaw 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM, Wisconsin's home for rational talk radio.
Consider yourself at home. Consider yourself one of the family. We take it to you so strong. It's clear.
It's clear. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin, Brey. A little, is that Oliver? Oliver Twist. Can I have some more, please? Yes. All right. There are 20 days, only 20 days until the midterm elections. It's exactly 4 weeks from today and 3 weeks from today. And we are doing our best to get down ballot candidates on the show so you can get to know them better before Election Day. And today is no different. We are joined today by Deborah Davis, an award-winning adjunct faculty member at UW-Milwaukee, a family caregiver, a former high school civics teacher, can't wait to talk to her about that, and the Democratic candidate for the Wisconsin Assembly District 82. Welcome to the show, Deborah.
Thank you, Kristin. It's great to be here.
So where is District 82? I always love asking those questions because with 99 assembly districts, and it doesn't necessarily seem the rhyme or reason of where districts are, and God knows with gerrymandering, they're like, wait, what city is this? What county is this? So where is District 82?
And of course, the district changed. So
yes.
I was campaigning yesterday where someone was saying, but I'm not in your district. I'm like, yes, you are. You are now. Welcome. So District 82 is most of Franklin, part of Greendale, part of Muskego, and part of Greenfield.
All right. So close.
Yes.
That's why you're here in person.
That's right.
Thank you for coming in person. So for people who don't know you or you haven't knocked on their door yet, what's some of your background?
So I actually grew up in Franklin. My parents built the house in 1963. So I went to Franklin K through 12. I was very involved in the community as an adolescent. So I was a leader in my church, youth group leader, editor of the junior high school paper, editor of the high school paper, of an independent high school paper, student council president, the works. And I was both a candidate for expulsion because of my independent paper in Franklin High School and the homecoming queen, which is really, I think, an interesting combination. But anyway.
Wait, what was your paper on that you almost got expelled?
Well, I did join the school paper to try and change it because I thought the quality wasn't very good. It was written by a class of students rather than as an extracurricular activity. And then sadly, a classmate of mine took his life, and I wanted to write a eulogy for him, and I didn't feel like I could put it in the school paper. So I wrote my own paper, and I just put in, and I got advertisers so it could be printed instead of mimeographed, and I just put in all the kinds of art news and civic news that wasn't in our school paper. But the journalism teacher, who was also the gym teacher, thought it was a personal attack on her. Because it was sort of a better paper. So there was a ruling that students couldn't distribute independent, materials on school grounds, even though there wasn't really anything in the paper that was, inappropriate content-wise. So the school board had to change their policies because by then, students had run their First Amendment rights. So I was not expelled, but I did give me a good story.
That is a good story. That's a great story. So you said civics. So because didn't you end up being a civics teacher for a while?
I did. Yes, I was. From Milwaukee Public Schools, I was a bilingual social studies. So civics and history I taught. Mm-hmm.
And is that also when you were an adjunct professor at UWM, or are you still a professor?
Yes, I still teach a course at UWM in the spring, along with my husband. My husband's a professor in the Helen Bader School of Social Welfare at UWM. And so we teach a class of social work students. Also, there are some students that come from other departments to take the class, and it's on mindfulness and community building. So it really comes out of my experience as a community organizer. So we co-teach the class. Yeah,
that's
it's a
fun.
lot of fun. It's a great
Would
class.
you recommend working with your husband?
It's gotten better over the years. I coined a new phrase. I said, we're going to have to work on our PDAs. So we had to stop calling each other hun, but also the PDEs, which are, any guess?
Public displays of emotion?
Of exasperation.
Ooh.
We're both a little transparent and have
you don't hide it in your face. Well,
no eye rollings, no sign language when you're in front of the class. People can see that.
That's so funny.
We've gotten better over time. Yeah.
So, but this is your first campaign?
actually, so I left Franklin after high school, and I came back 8 years ago to care for my mother, not expecting to become politically involved.
Okay.
But I live at, just off of Ryan Road, and the city wanted to build this enormous slaughterhouse.
They keep trying to find a place for that.
I know, right on the Franklin-Muskego border, which was very close to my house. So I got involved in that, and then learned that there was sort of a pattern of poor decision-making around land use policies in Franklin. So I stayed involved, and then we had an opportunity, again, because redistricting, to vote for a new alder person. And so I worked really hard to find someone to run for that position. And my neighbors were like, you're the one that's going to meetings and writing the notes and started the email list, and you need to run. And so I waited till the last minute, and no one would put their name on the line. So I ran for alderwoman last April. And our campaign went really well until I got some kind of virus. I was sick for a few months, and we still thought that we had it in the bag, but I lost by 23 votes. So I've sort of been campaigning since January. It's been a long stretch. So again, people asked me, please run, because we couldn't find anyone, because now the district is even more gerrymandered than it was before, the 82nd district. And so nobody wanted to run, but we could not leave that line blank. Again, I worked really hard to find someone, because for me, I've had a fire in my belly all my life for community advocacy and community service. But I'm standing by the side of the woman who stood by my side for the first couple decades of my life. Caring for my mother is really important to me. But we couldn't find anyone. And then finally, I found a friend who said she would help me care for my mother. So I jumped in again at the last minute and took off running. So it's been a great campaign. I love getting to know my community more, and meeting all the efficacious people around the state that are really committed to democracy in Wisconsin, and working really hard on this November election.
Absolutely. We're talking to Deborah Davis, who is the Democratic candidate for the Assembly for the 82nd Assembly District in Franklin, Greendale, Muskego. And so what did you learn from campaigning as an alder that you've taken into this campaign, and what has the conversations been like as you're going door to door and talking to people?
So one thing I learned is that we're not as polarized as people think that we are. A lot of people say, well, I really look at the issues. Well, I like to meet the candidates. And, and sometimes when I meet Republicans, that they're very polite. So it's really expanded my faith in our community. I loved running nonpartisan. And so it was hard for me to take that step. But what I found is that
running nonpartisan as an alder.
As an alder. When I took that step to run as a Democrat, I found that the Republicans I worked with, when we worked on a local level on these issues, it was great because it was very nonpartisan. We didn't even know what parties each other belonged to. And I love that kind of collaboration. And I wish it could happen on the state level. It's inspiring to see how easy it is for it to happen on a local level. But a lot of my Republican neighbors are still endorsing me, because,
oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah, because they said they know me and they like the way I work. And so, it's just that growing enthusiasm about knowing that the community does care. They're just too busy sometimes to pay attention. So they've been working on the doors people have been really responsive. I think that I will do this I don't know that I plan to be in public office the rest of my life, but I will support people running for the rest of my life. I love campaigning.
Do you?
I do. Yeah. I
just
love
because you like
people.
talking, like you just like talking to people?
I really do. Yeah. And hearing their concerns. Absolutely.
And I've loved interviewing candidates. I mean, obviously it's a degree away, but hearing from down ballot candidates, the conversations that they're having, and what you said is not, it has been a pattern, as I would say, from everyone who's running for either state Senate or Assembly, and the conversations that they're having is, once you actually talk to people, we're not as polarized as you think.
That's absolutely true.
And the optimism, hope, whatever word you kind of want to put in there, as far as where this is not a lost cause, because sometimes when you're
Right.
just paying attention to the news or
right.
just reading comment sections, you're like, how do we fix this? And
Right.
I think we fix it by having actual conversations.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
And so in the conversations that you're having, what are the issues? What do people care about? What are they saying that they need fixed? And they feel like as a civics teacher, sometimes the things that we care about, we don't necessarily always know which level of government is responsible for fixing that. And so when you're talking to people, how much do you feel like the things that they care about is something that in the assembly you would be able to propose legislation or vote on legislation that could actually fix those problems?
I do get some concerns about things at the federal level. I do have to explain to people, well, I don't know that we can do that much about gas prices and inflation and immigration. But, people are also really concerned about gun safety and reproductive rights. And so I tell them this is definitely a state issue, and they're public schools. And sometimes it's hard. People are a little shy about talking about the issues that are important to them. I'm finding it's harder to pull that
interesting.
out. So then I go down my issues, and people are just like, yeah, that's pretty much it. Funding for the public schools, reproductive health, healthcare, gun safety, labor rights. Those are all climate change. Those are all people. I get a lot of head nodding when I talk about those issues.
Well, so those are obviously what I was going to ask was your biggest issues is gun safety. And what were the other ones?
Gun safety, public schools, healthcare, reproductive rights, expanding Medicaid under healthcare, labor issues, but also democracy is at the base of it. And people are shocked to hear that they weren't aware of the Republican Wisconsin state legislators that were involved in encouraging Pence to not certify the election. The fake elector scheme they're not aware of. Not aware that, for example, my opponent just 2 or 3 months ago co-sponsored a bill to decertify the Wisconsin election. So democracy is really at the base of it, because if we have these gerrymandered maps and there's no accountability for people trying to overthrow the elections, and that Supreme Court case coming up, if we lose that, the Moore versus Harper, then and there was also 33 bills proposed that would lower access to the ballot or lower the authority of the Wisconsin Election Commission. So, and we also see that our state legislators don't seem to feel obligated to vote in terms of majority opinion in the state on those critical issues that I mentioned.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got to go to break, but Deborah Davis will still be here when we come back. Stay with us. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
Multi-millionaire Senator Ron Johnson won't stop trying to cut our Social Security. But you don't have to take my word for it. He just keeps saying it. Talking about benefit cuts.
Do you need to reduce benefits, maybe on a means-tested basis?
Or forcing seniors to work longer.
But you have to factor that into the programs, probably in terms of raising retirement ages.
And if that wasn't scary enough, now he's saying Social Security shouldn't even be guaranteed. And if politicians in Washington didn't renew it every year, it should end. I guess ending Social Security isn't a big deal if you're as rich as Senator Ron Johnson. But for the rest of us seniors, it's a matter of life and death, literally. Paid for by AFT Solidarity, www.aft.org, and not authorized by any candidate or candidates committee. AFT Solidarity is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Hi, everyone. Listen to my show, The Matt McNeil Show, weekday afternoons at 3 p.m. on the Shaw 101. 1 hour every weekday where we'll talk all sorts of things like politics, especially with what's going on this election season, plus a lot of other things, too. Parenting, the arts, religion, music, beer. If it matters to Wisconsin and Minnesota, we'll talk about it. Phone calls are welcome at 952-946-6205 for 1 hour each day. Come see the train chimp, The Matt McNeil Show, with the aggressive progressive Matt McNeil, 3 p.m. weekday afternoons right here on the Shaw 101.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. Cloudy this afternoon with a high of 42. Northwest winds 20 to 25 miles an hour. Cloudy skies again tonight. Lows dip down to about 30. High temperatures reach up to 44. Tomorrow, mainly clear skies. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times Thursday, with daytime highs approaching 52. 65 Friday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 39 degrees.
Getting to know you, getting to know all about you, getting to lie.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. Our guest this half hour is Deborah Davis, who is the Democratic candidate for the 82nd Assembly District in Wisconsin. And I have been on this for a while because I don't remember what civics, I think I took a government class, but in report after report, the average American citizen and their knowledge of civics is declining, which feels problematic.
Yes.
And so as a former civics teacher, what were some of the major tenets that you felt like to be a responsible citizen students need to come away with? And do you think they're still being taught?
That's a good question. You know, I taught civics quite a while ago, before we had cell phones and apps. So if I was to teach civics now, I would start with helping students identify what really matters to them, find really good surveys, because the hardest thing is people feeling like, it doesn't affect them. It doesn't impact them. They feel fairly disempowered. And I taught in low-income schools. So that would be the first thing I would do, is find a good survey so they can get a sense of, there are things that I believe in, and then match those values with different political perspectives or political candidates. So when they leave, they know how to look it up on a special app and compare what they think to what candidates think, so that they are motivated to vote and vote for people that really do reflect their interests. And then there's a lot of great curriculum for getting students to study what are some issues in their community and building up projects around them and presenting them to their local candidates, which is actually something I've thought a lot about, because if I am in office, if I do make this seat, what we're finding is that, very few bills proposed by Democrats are making it to the vote. So what do we do when we're in office? Getting hearings. We're not getting hearings. So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to do outreach as a former civics teacher to our public schools in Muskego, Franklin, and Greendale, and work with the teachers and getting them to Madison for field trips and talking to classes and seeing what we can do to collaborate to build up that civic engagement. But so anything that's experiential and starting from the point of, you think you don't have a particular perspective, but you probably do. And we can show you that what happens in Madison and in Washington and at your city council and at the county level makes a difference. And then gradually feed in some of the other stuff that can be a little bit more dry, because some civics can be really dry sometimes. And I used to always say, okay, guys, this is the way it's supposed to work. It doesn't always work this way, which is why you need to stay involved. So I think that's also very important in teaching history or teaching civics. This is the way it's supposed to work. We had to work very hard to win these rights, to have this, and they can be taken away. So we have to keep working. Here are some examples of, where what was happening in government didn't reflect our aspirations. And this is what we could do about it. This is what is being done about it. So we do need to teach that gap. And for them to understand that civics is actually a dynamic thing. We have principles, and then, we have, what's happening. So I feel like if we teach that to kids, then they'll be less discouraged if they feel like what's happening in government sometimes doesn't reflect what they learned in civics. So teaching getting them to understand what their values are, that candidates represent different values and different issues, and understanding that civics is a dynamic thing and that we have to continue to feed democracy to kind of keep it alive.
I feel like a lot of that advice could also work for adults.
True.
Things that we should either forgot or never learned, because once you're 18, being a active participant in our democracy is part of your responsibility as a citizen, right?
Yeah, do that research.
Well, with the minutes that we have left, we always do a speed round with our candidates to get to know them a little bit better. So, first job.
My first job when I was 15, I got to go to a youth conservation corps camp, DNR camp, where I got to build trout streams and take out invasive species and stuff. It was very exciting.
Cool. Person you'd most like to meet, dead or alive?
Dead or alive? Let's see. Mother Teresa would be great.
Okay. Something about you that would surprise people?
Well, I performed in a women's circus that
is surprising.
That toured Nicaragua in solidarity with the Sandinistas during the Contra War. How's that?
That is great. That's the most specific, surprising answer I think we've gotten so far.
We're going to have to have you back just to talk about that.
Most recent movie or TV show you'd recommend?
Let's see. I just watched, it's an old documentary. I just watched Forks Over Knives. That was interesting. That was good.
Favorite thing about your district?
I love that when I was graduating from high school, I felt so sad because I thought I will never be the member of such a diverse community again in my life, even though we were like 99% white. So I love the diversity. People think that we're not diverse. We are. We're more racially diverse than we were before, but we're diverse in terms of class and all kinds of different things. So, yeah, I love the diversity.
All right. Last two. We have less than a minute left. What's your walk-up song?
A walk-up song.
Like what song gets you pumped up?
Yeah. My Shot from Hamilton. And also Defying Gravity. Oh, that was two.
And then what's on your Wisconsin bucket list?
My go to Wisconsin bucket list?
Yeah.
Where do I want to go?
Anything left? Do you want to do?
Black River Falls. There's I think a beautiful state park up there that I haven't been to.
All right. Deborah Davis, thank you so much for being here today. We will link all of your information for your website and your socials on our website. And good luck with the campaign.
Thank you, Kristin. It was great to be here. Thank you for your work.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll take a break. And when we come back, it'll still be As Goes Wisconsin.
A progressive voice for rural Wisconsin. WAUK 540 AM. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
The Devil's Advocates. Never personal, only politics.
Relative to population, I believe Waukesha County is running like twice the mortality rate of Dane County.
Right. Well, and then you and your wife braved Mayville to see the band or the plant.
But man, I'm vaxxed, I'm boosted. I'm feeling pretty good about life.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about good shape, but I'm vaxxed and I'm boosted.
Yeah, did you have a couple of glasses of wine up there?
No wine, lots of rum. Rum-tum-tum.
Follow the Devil's
I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. President Biden says national abortion bans must be stopped, and it could happen if Democrats have a majority in Congress following next month's midterms.
If we do that, here's the promise I make to you and the American people. The first bill that I will send to the Congress will be to codify Roe v. Wade. And when Congress passes it, I'll sign it in January, 50 years after Roe was first decided the law of the land.
That is a big if. Republicans are widely projected to gain control of at least the House.
If you care about the right to choose, then you got to vote. That's why in these midterm elections are so critical, elect more Democratic senators to the United States Senate and more Democrats to keep control of the House of Representatives.
Abortion rights have been a key motivating factor for Democrats this year, although the economy and inflation still rank as chief concerns for most voters. I'm Ed Donahue.
We tried Dynovite nutritional supplement, and after a couple of weeks, we noticed a big difference. Our little Gizmo's coat was shinier, and there was a lot less scratching and shedding.
My dog smelled and scratched constantly. We bathed and sprayed her, took her to the vet, but no results. Now, a little Dynovite in her food helps Bella keep her beautiful coat with no scratching or smell.
Happier, healthier with every bite. Over 1 million pets helped with Dynovite.
Hi, this is Joe Cordell with the law firm Cordell & Cordell. When the prospect of divorce becomes a reality, you need a partner that you can count on. If you're a man in this situation, consider contacting Cordell & Cordell. We've helped men navigate complex legal matters for 30 years.
Contact Cordell & Cordell to schedule an appointment with one of our firm's Atlanta area attorneys. 404-793-0000. Online at CordellCordell.com. 1 Glen Lake Parkway Northeast, Suite 975, Atlanta, Georgia 30328.
For Civic Media, I'm Jane Matner with your headlines. Republican Fond du Lac County DA Eric Toney, who's running against Democratic Attorney General Josh Kaul November 8th, says when a district attorney doesn't enforce the state's 1849 abortion ban, a different DA should be able to come into the county to do it. In an interview broadcast Friday on PBS, Toney said, quote, "We need to give our Attorney General the authority to prosecute, and I think another approach would be allowing for adjoining counties to be able to investigate and enforce that abortion ban in Wisconsin. Currently, DAs in Wisconsin aren't allowed to prosecute cases outside of their jurisdictions unless requested by that county's district attorney. AG Kaul says he's focusing on undoing the 1849 abortion law, which was put into place before women had the right to vote. Kaul and Toney are scheduled to debate at 4 p.m. October 27th at the State Bar of Wisconsin headquarters in Madison. You're listening to the Shaw 101 FM WAUK 540 AM.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. What do you think a all-women's circus looks like?
I have no idea. I am so intrigued by that. And can I just reiterate something that Deborah Davis, who was just here, mentioned? She's running for the 82nd Assembly District.
Mm-hmm.
She ran for alderman and lost by 23 votes. So please think about that when you talk to people who are like, my vote doesn't matter. I don't care. 23 votes. That's not many.
Well, and it's also that is a voter suppression tactic, right? Is to make you feel like your vote doesn't count.
You bet.
And when things get gerrymandered, the Electoral College, those are things that make you feel like, well, my assumption is everyone in my area votes this way. So even though I would vote a different way, what's the point? And
you might be canceling someone out.
That and also, as Deborah said, in the attempt to even run and not just give up and leave that, have it be an unopposed seat, the conversations that you have, the needle you can still move by putting your best foot forward, having these conversations, talking to your neighbors, talking about what bothers them, what they want fixed, regardless of how they typically vote or which party they typically vote for, matters ultimately, right?
It does.
And continuing to show up and show that there are people who care, even if you feel like your elected representative has not been very responsive. And who knows, I mean, I don't, for all the candidates that we've gotten on the show, TBD, right? There's not like there's polling for all these down ballot candidates to see how it looks for them. And the fact that I just have so much respect for all of them, knowing that what is told is, well, this is a very gerrymandered district. You don't have a shot. and the people who do it anyways. And this goes both directions, right?
Sure.
There's fewer districts that have been gerrymandered to be Democrat, but as we had Francesca Hong on 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, she knows that she's in a very safe seat.
Sure.
And so she's using her time to help other people who are in purple or red districts, and which I don't think, it's not good either. But it's the same thing like when we had Ariel on last week, and she talked about in her video when she got the high noon thrown at her head.
Yeah.
That she tried to make a joke about living in New York and your vote doesn't matter. And that's how I felt when I lived in New York or lived in California. I still voted, but it's that when it comes to the presidential elections where you're like, well, you just assume where it's going to go. And we are not like that in Wisconsin.
No, we're not. So please don't ever think your vote doesn't count. Don't ever think your vote doesn't count, because it does.
It does. And it does even more for like the smaller the race, like an older person or an assembly race, think about Robin Voss.
I was just going to say that.
Robin Voss in the primary was 263 votes.
Yeah, it was less than 300 votes.
Yeah.
That's a teeny margin.
Yeah. And so vote. Please vote.
Just once, but go vote.
So last week we were talking about I don't know if it's an unpopular opinion, but the idea of mandatory service in one way or another, and that the benefits I see as having part of every citizen's responsibility is spending, if there was a rule policy of 1 to 2 years in some kind of service position, whether that's military or AmeriCorps or working on infrastructure, something like that.
Something.
And partially that is because in the recruitment process as it stands today, since we haven't had to use the draft since the end of the Vietnam War, the way recruitment typically goes is targeting lower income students, high school students. And it's the people who want to be able to pay for college and choose between debt or military service. And this isn't, there's plenty of people who have admitted that part of the reason that they signed up to be in the military is because they were looking for an option to make higher education more affordable.
Sure.
And so the question has been risen as far as what does student loan forgiveness mean for military recruitment?
And they've been having a tough time the last couple of years anyway.
Specifically, yes. So last month, 19 House Republicans sent a letter to President Biden to raise concerns over the unintended consequences of his student loan relief plan and how that would what consequences that would have on the military's recruitment efforts. And I started reading an article that looked into that more. And the assumption right now is that specifically the student loan forgiveness isn't necessarily what's going to impact recruitment, because it's also is people who already have debt versus people who would still be going to school. But overall, when they were researching this article, that the number one indicator of low recruitment is a good economy.
So when things are well and people are working, they don't want to sign up for service.
So is Elizabeth Frank, is someone who's involved in counter recruitment in Chicago public schools, said the single biggest predictor of military recruitment is the economy. When the economy is good, recruitment suffers. And so right now, like you said, it sounds like every branch of the military is struggling to meet recruitment goals right now. And they haven't had this much trouble signing recruits since the end of the draft in 1973.
No kidding.
Yeah. A Defense Department survey obtained by NBC News revealed that only 9% of young Americans eligible to serve in the military intended to do so, the lowest number since 2007. Just 1 in 11 people ages 17 to 24 have a propensity to serve, quote unquote. And there's questions about the sustainability of an all volunteer force. And I I just think it's interesting. This goes back to what I was saying last week, where there is something about just having the expectation that who's going to be in the military are poor people or people who can't afford college. And that is so intrinsically tied together as far as how the military recruits people. And it just doesn't feel good knowing that those two things are tied together so closely, that there is almost not cheering, but it is easier for all branches of the military to recruit when the economy is bad. Doesn't that feel like perverse?
It does.
Incentives?
It does, but I've often felt the same way about Wall Street. When workers do better and when workers get raises, Wall Street goes down.
And how does that function? As far as like, what is the correlation between those two things?
Isn't it that employers are losing because they have to pay their workers more?
I don't know.
You would think that if it was good for, it should be good for everybody.
Well, because you'd think that if people are making more money, they would want to invest in the stock market. Because I looked that up the other day as far as just interested of what percentage of the American population has money invested in stocks.
It's pretty small.
It was still like 50%.
Is it
before?
50?
Yeah, it was like around 50%.
That's got to be because of 401ks then.
Yeah, I think it's between 401ks, and it's not necessarily a lot of money.
Sure.
Just invested at all. And it never has recovered. I think leading up to the 2008 recession, it was in the 60%-ish, and it's never really recovered since then as far as people getting back into the stock market. But I always think about that as when we talk about the difference between Wall Street doing well and what the economy is doing, that those two things are not to conflate those two things, because not everyone's playing
the market.
In the market.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, so going back, I don't know what the answer is, because obviously the draft is not an ideal. It's like we said last week, where it's like either everyone's getting drafted and everyone has to serve in some way, even in times of peace, because this model feels predatory, especially as we hear more and more of the suicide rate of veterans, the PTSD rate of veterans, like the amount of lifelong problems that people come back with if they've served, and to know that it's specifically targeting Chicago,
people with less
Milwaukee,
advantages,
and
with
like
fewer
for people
advantages,
who and like that is the choice that we've given so often. We've been given them is, you can, if you don't want to go into debt and you can't get scholarships, you can serve in the military, and that's what can pay for school.
And isn't this also part of what the Vietnam protesters were also angry about? Not just the actions that were happening in Vietnam, but the fact that the draft was not applied equally.
Mm-hmm.
And wealthy people could buy their way out of it. Isn't that the whole premise of the
Oh,
song,
like
Fortunate Son?
Well, you could buy your way out of it. People who were faking being gay, who were faking bone spurs.
Yes, but faking injuries.
Going to college.
So
there was all these, like, there was loopholes as far as not having to do it.
So if you were wealthy enough, you could get out of it.
Yeah.
And that's
kind of the case, because I think about this a fair amount, of the pockets of heavy. Like, I have a friend who is from Dallas, like Fort Worth area, and the amount of people that she either went to high school with, her family members, like the amount of people who served, it's more than two hands.
She
right?
can't even count that high.
And in my life, I have one uncle who served, who went to West Point and then served after that, which is also a very different experience than being recruited out of high school to join the military. Like,
No doubt.
West Point is West Point. And then maybe a couple people who are like a couple degrees away from me, but not a ton of close friends, not a ton of family, and just how segregated military service feels like it is. And so you can live your life as an American citizen and largely just not know that many people who ever served, especially my age.
Absolutely.
I mean, your age, my parents' age, I think that's less likely just because of Vietnam and everything like that. But I think my age, there's people who that's what they live and breathe, and just because of what part of either what socioeconomic class they're from, what part of the country they were from, who their family was, versus being very detached from that world, unless you actively choose, as I've become friends with Dan Buttry over at the War Memorial,
yeah,
and learning more about the different services that are available for veterans and stuff like that. That's like me opting into learning more about it versus it just being part of my world. And I don't know, that feels problematic.
It certainly allows the vast majority of Americans to not have to engage.
Yeah,
And
this doesn't affect, these wars feel far away.
I don't have to worry about it. My kids aren't going to go.
And I remember when we pulled out of Afghanistan, it was such a mess. And it was also, that was really the turning point, I think, for Biden's numbers, that I remember seeing, and of course, whenever we see something that's on TikTok or social media, it's an anecdote, but stories matter, right? Our brains are wired to resonate with individual stories more than numbers. And I saw a lot of veterans who had served in Afghanistan give very nuanced testimony of how this made them feel and how complicated it felt, of the people left behind, knowing that we should have left so long ago, and actually listening to them versus how many people were just spouting off of how they felt about it, having never served, having no idea, but just the tragedy of how that all ended up, and not allowing for like more nuance and people who were actually involved to hear them and put more value on how they feel about it. But anyways, all right, well, we're going to go to a break. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Stick with us.
Healing the world with comedy, making a literal difference metaphorically. A Jew walks into a bar, and I've saved him a seat. That's healing the world with comedy. I'm a special kind of white.
From the kennel to the coop, whatever the season, Fleet Farm has everything to keep your animals happy and healthy. From
I hit the wrong out.
Season to mastering those retrieval skills.
What do you want to talk about for 10 minutes or 8 minutes when we come back?
Did you want to do the app again or no? It's kind of a...
We did a big one before.
We did. Anything you're excited about coming up next week?
I could talk about...
You could plug ahead.
The MC thing and did you hear about the vampire that was found?
Headline is skeleton of female, quote, vampire unearthed at cemetery in Poland.
Listen Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.
A sharp sickle was placed across her neck and a padlock was put around her big toe. Her burial reveals fear around vampires.
Listen to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey right here on the Shaw 101 FM and WAUK 540 AM.
This local musical interlude is brought to you by Max Inc. Radio. Kelsey Miles.
Let the music roll. Hit it.
Listen to Max Inc. Radio every Saturday and Sunday, 6 p.m. to midnight. Download the podcast at maxincradio.com. We are local music.
Cloudy this afternoon with a high of 42. Northwest winds 20 to 25 miles an hour. Cloudy skies again tonight. Lows dip down to about 30. High temperatures reach up to 44. Tomorrow, mainly clear skies. Sunshine mixed with clouds at times Thursday, with daytime highs approaching 52. 65 Friday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 39 degrees.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. What is that song? I like it.
Do you remember rock and roll radio, the Ramones?
Ooh. Ooh, very nice. Very nice. Well, as we keep saying, I think that we're going to be parroting ourselves for a while as between now and the election day, because it is very important, but my calendar is booking up. I feel like it's a situation right now where it's all hands on deck. So I'm saying yes to everything, even
Pretty
though
much.
I don't have time, but that's okay. We'll figure it out. We'll sleep on my honeymoon. And, but last night, Christina Sheldon, who is an assembly rep up in Green Bay, contacted me and she said, any chance you want to MC this thing? So for all of our listeners who are in the Fox Valley, specifically people listening in Oshkosh, Green Bay, Appleton, next Tuesday, October 25th, I will be in Brown County emceeing a Fright Night for abortion rights. And costumes are encouraged. So throwback to our conversation yesterday that I hope my Zool costume comes in time, because I would love to wear that as I MC this event.
That would be perfect, actually. And
there is no Dana, only Zool.
Only Zool. And you could, if you do the hair and the makeup right, it doesn't matter what you wear.
That's true.
It'll be fine.
People will just know.
Oh, I think so.
Would you know, Brooke? Have you seen Ghostbusters? Okay, so
she would know.
She would know. Okay.
Or Gozer. Go as Gozer.
Oh, that's a good one too. But events happening as far as there's so much stuff happening for Get Out the Vote stuff. And so if you have an event that you know of that you would like us to plug, promote, attend, shoot us a text, 844-967-2789. That's 844-96-PARTY. You can also shoot us an email. As far as I know, Badgers Vote, I think that they have an event on the 24th. That's the student group in UW-Madison that does a lot of nonpartisan voting stuff. I know, obviously, on the 29th when Obama's in Milwaukee, but we'll probably make a running list of all the different events that are happening between now and Election Day, because a lot's going on.
There certainly is. We do have a text I wanted to share with you, by the way, from the 608. Last hour at this time, we were talking about the Civic Media app, in which you can download that and then listen to all of our stations all over the state. And our texter from the 608 says, kicking it old school on 540 AM. Almost gets out as one of your AM rivals. It's a little bit fuzzy, but I'm listening on 540 in Madison right now. In the driveway.
In the driveway.
Yeah.
Shout out to Madison.
Yeah, that's great.
That is great. Thank you for the text. Do you have any events or voting stuff that you're going to be involved in, Jane?
I don't go out past 7 o'clock. Because I'm a wild person, Kristin.
Danger Lady Jane.
Yes, and that is, my life is full of danger, and no, I don't. And I admire your energy level for saying yes to pretty much everything, because you very rarely say no, and I think
Not very good at it.
I think that's really admirable.
It's funny because we had a agreement. I think we've talked about this on the show, that Mike and I, since our wedding anniversary was on August 20th, that we would save the 20th of each month.
That's right.
To have a date night. And we did it last month.
Okay. Do you remember what you did?
We cooked dinner at home, and then we rewatched, since we did a live stream of our ceremony, we rewatched our ceremony, and it was a night in, but it was fun.
That's nice.
And then this month, he was in charge, but I usurped him, and we are going to Luann Bird's event at the Cooperage instead. And he's like, "Well, this is our date night." I was like, "This is important." So I've already broken our commitment to have a date night for the two of us. But
if there were a judge involved in this, there would be a flag thrown on this decision on whether or not attending a political event qualifies as a date night.
Well, it's technically a concert. It's technically a concert.
Well, there's music involved.
Yes, there's music involved.
All right.
We're going to go to dinner afterwards. We're going to La Miranda. Like there is a date aspect to it. But he also knows who he married.
This is true. If he didn't, he certainly is learning out now.
And so there is no. I'm not great at protecting my time, which is fine. But I'm excited for that concert, and I'm excited for.
And where is that?
That's going to be at the Cooperage.
In Brookfield?
No, the Cooperage is in next to Boone and Crockett in Milwaukee.
Okay.
It's actually the same event space that we had for the roast last week or 2 weeks ago. So it's a really great event space. And I'm thinking of it's gonna be a concert. She's gonna be Luann Bird's gonna be there. I'm just really excited because I feel like that is a campaign that keeps popping up as we talk about the competitive level when it comes to state Senate and state assembly races. And that is one where I feel like it's a little bit higher profile, where there's multiple different, whether it's Sarah Godlewski, Francesca Hong, there's lots of people who I think, one, because she is a very good candidate, and also just with how the numbers fall, it is a competitive race, and there's not a lot of those. It's also, she's running against Bob Donovan, and who's been in Wisconsin politics for a very long time.
Lots of name recognition.
And ironically, I don't know, the fact that he's run for both Milwaukee mayor and assembly in Greenfield in the same year is just...
One would think that there would be rules about that. That you
I mean,
can't-
really, the rules are you just have to live where you're running. But if he had two residences, if he had a place in Milwaukee that he could put when he was running Milwaukee, and then he also had a place in Greenfield. I mean, I think his line is he got sick of the crime in Milwaukee, so he moved to Greenfield. But when he was running for mayor, everyone was like, "Don't you live in Greenfield?"
Hello. And I
don't know how you enforce those rules, because I don't think he's the only one. I mean, that's the criticism of Tim Michaels, right? It's like he hasn't been living here for X amount of years. His kids didn't go to high school here, and he may have always had a residence here.
But how engaged has he been here?
Yes.
I'm surprised there aren't more strict rules about how long you have to reside somewhere, as opposed to can you just parachute in a month before and say, I'm running?
Well, that's basically what's happening in Pennsylvania. But I feel like Dr. Oz is paying for it more than it feels like Tim Michaels is. I feel like without living in Pennsylvania, the amount of social media I see of Dr. Oz being criticized for living in New Jersey, and versus how much I feel like I don't see that as one of the major messaging that's happening with the governor's campaign here. But again,
is it because of the business ties that the Michaels Corporation
But you know who
has?
might be able to tell us is our guest for the next hour,
Isn't that
who's worked
handy?
on a lot of Wisconsin campaigns. And so he may have some insight in this. But my dear friend Josh Burstein will be with us when we come back from this break for the whole hour to talk about comedy, Wisconsin campaigns, and just how to keep your head above water. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Stay with us.
Hey everybody, I'm Joel Clayfish, and I've got a new show on WAUK 540 AM 101 FM The Shaw. It's called Raised in the Shaw with Joel Clayfish. I was born and raised in Waukesha, and you wouldn't believe what a springboard that is for a crazy exciting life. We'll talk provider lifestyle, hunting, fishing, and of course, cooking from field to table, because food's my favorite dish. We'll have local and national celebrity guests. Join us at 7 Thursdays for Raised in the Shaw. See you then.
Dueling Tangents with Luke and Brian.
I'm really trying hard not to go insane from the mind screw that is this situation with the I was going to say the GAB, but now it's the WEC, which was audited by the LAB, and then it's now screwed up by the GOP, and we're all SOL. Good for us. Congratulations.
Look at all those acronyms. Yeah.
We're the winners.
Tune in for Dueling Tangents every weekday at 2.
You are listening to WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W266 DR Waukesha, always streaming on the
AP News. I'm Ed Donahue. President Biden is making a promise to voters leading up to next month's midterm elections. The AP Sagar Magani has the story.
The president's first asking them to remember June 24th, the day the Supreme Court overruled Roe v. Wade's abortion protections.
The anger, the worry, the disbelief.
He wants Americans to take that to the polls and ensure Democrats keep control of Congress.
If we do that, here's the promise I make to you and the American people. The first bill that I will send to the Congress will be to codify Roe v. Wade.
And sign the bill around the ruling's 50th anniversary in January.
We can do this if we vote.
It's a big if. Republicans are widely projected to win the House. And even if Democrats keep the Senate, they need to abolish the filibuster to pass an abortion law with just a simple majority. Sagar Magani, Washington.
Health and Human Services Secretary Javier Becerra announced a historic investment in the nation's behavioral health infrastructure. He says it connects the dots to make sure everyone is given whole health care. It includes a new phone number.
988 is now on board. It's the 911 for those who are about to do something they should not do with their own life. 988 becomes a place where you can get help.
Workers in France took to the streets across the country today, striking for pay hikes that keep up with rising inflation. French President Emmanuel Macron's government is losing patience with the strikers, who are backed by his political rivals on the left. After 3 missions in space, Russian cosmonaut Oleg Artemyev ran into difficulty on Earth when he drove over a colleague on a dark road outside Moscow, less than 3 weeks after returning from his latest orbiting mission. The colleague is hospitalized with severe fractures. Stocks are higher on Wall Street. This is AP News.
We tried Dynovite nutritional supplement, and after a couple of weeks, we noticed a big difference. Our little Gizmo's coat was shinier, and there was a lot less scratching and shedding.
My dog smelled and scratched constantly. We bathed and sprayed her, took her to the vet, but no results. Now, a little Dynovite in her food helps Bella keep her beautiful coat with no scratching or smell.
Happier, healthier with every bite. Over 1 million pets helped with Dynovite.
Hi, this is Joe Cordell with the law firm Cordell & Cordell. When the prospect of divorce becomes a reality, you need a partner that you can count on. If you're a man in this situation, consider contacting Cordell & Cordell. We've helped men navigate complex legal matters for 30 years.
Contact Cordell & Cordell to schedule an appointment with one of our firm's Atlanta area attorneys. 404-793-0000. Online at CordellCordell.com. 1 Glen Lake Parkway Northeast, Suite 975, Atlanta, Georgia 30328.
The Shaw 101 FM, Franklin's choice for news talk radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
Hey, Susan, how you doing?
I'm good, Earl. Again, I want to thank you for a wonderful show. The interesting thing is that you're now starting to give people in that part of Wisconsin some food for thought. Having him call in was wonderful. I think we all have to really work hard together to bring a lot more people in the fold.
I'm glad that gentleman called. And it's not that I'm so arrogant that I think I know everything. There's too much in the world to know and think more of myself than I should.
Here on the Shaw 101 FM and WAUK 540 AM.
Hey there, fellow working class heroes. I'm Rick Smith, host of The Rick Smith Show, and we are now on the air in Waukesha, live weeknights 8 to 10 p.m. right here on WAUK 540 AM, 101 FM, The Shaw. Turn on, tune in, and help us rebuild the American dream. Check out our website at thericksmithshow.com. The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. Weeknights 8 to 10 p.m. right here on WAUK 540 AM, 101 FM, The Shaw.
Speaker Voss, I understand you don't have any children. Does that mean he's been possibly practicing sex with contraceptives? What? Or is he just less than a man? How do you go through the entire life 3 wives later and no chitlins? Shooting blanks? Perhaps. Pull and pray. Doubtful. Not getting any. Unlikely. Unable to perform. More likely. Paying for it. I hate to judge.
We don't judge here. We're the devil's advocate.
Listen to the Devil's Advocates live weekdays from 3 to 6 p.m.
For Civic Media, I'm Luke Mathers with your headlines. Fire departments in 60 counties around the state have identified firefighting foam containing PFAS, and the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources is working to collect and properly dispose of these forever chemicals to keep them out of Wisconsin's groundwater and water systems. Governor Evers allocated $1 million to the DNR and the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection in his 2021-2023 biennial budget to help with the collection, disposal, and replacement of these firefighting foams to protect firefighters, emergency responders, and the citizens of Wisconsin. Governor Evers and Attorney General Josh Kaul have also filed a a lawsuit against 3 Wisconsin manufacturers and 15 other defendants whose actions have led directly to PFAS contamination to water, property, and natural resources in Wisconsin, according to the suit. They believe polluters, not Wisconsin taxpayers, should bear the enormous costs to address PFAS contamination in the state. You're listening to The Shaw on 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM.
Live programming for WAUK Radio 540 AM and 101 FM is produced right in the Shaw in beautiful downtown Waukesha, Wisconsin.
Bringing some sanity to the airwaves. The Shaw 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM.
Josh. International cuisine.
That's it, yeah. There you go. Josh Burstein, Venice, California, and originally by way of Tulsa, right?
Yes, just your run-of-the-mill Asian Jew from Tulsa, Oklahoma.
I see a sitcom in your future, Josh.
Let's hope.
You lived in a simulated moon base, of course.
That's right, with 5 European scientists in a habitat that NASA uses out in Hawaii.
How long did you live in there?
2 weeks, 1 lunar cycle.
Wow, okay. And just for fun? Or?
Just to see how the average person would live off planet.
Okay.
It was a study.
Okay. What's this? What's it called? Krav
Maga?
Krav Maga. I'm not familiar with it.
It's a martial art. It's like Israeli self-offense.
Okay. All right. Do you have any? You're a very interesting man, Josh. I wish we could spend more time talking.
Thank you.
But I must move on. Sure. Don't think ill of me.
Our guest this hour, fresh off his Wheel of Fortune debut, political strategist, badger, comedian, my friend, Josh Burstein.
Hello, hello.
How are you? How are you basking in your newfound fame of Wheel of Fortune glory?
Pretty splendid. I'm going to spend my $1,700, $17,000.
So I was going to say, that's a big difference.
On quality bakeware, which is the spoiler final phrase that I did not get because it's not English.
It's not a colloquial term that I've ever used, but who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Dig deep sometimes. Josh Burstein. So I'm so happy that you're here. You went to Wisconsin. You've spent lots of time in Wisconsin. You don't currently live in Wisconsin, but you are in Wisconsin right now to lend your services where needed for campaigning potentially, or just to have fun with your friends that live here.
I mean, any given even numbered October makes sense to be helping out in the Badger State, getting out the vote. I just did 4 shows with Charlie Barons in Appleton, La Crosse, doing some comedy. And it was my grand excuse to stick around until Election Day.
So let's back it up a little bit as far as your experience, both because you're not from here, as we said, Asian Jew from Oklahoma.
Accurate.
Not a lot of you. But you went you started because you went to college here.
Yes, go Badgers.
And then basically been working on most campaigns in Wisconsin since like 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So let's run down the list of what you've worked on.
Sure. So I was the new media guy for Students for Barack Obama in 2007 and carried that into a 2012 return for Obama. And then went into the Obama administration under the Department of Labor, came back here to help Tony and Mandela win and hopped on a bus with them for the final weeks of 2018. And then was bunkered down in, I think, the brew house in Milwaukee for the 2020 elections, doing a lot of digital ads down the final stretch.
So unclear if this is causation, correlation, but largely every election where Democrats have won since 2007 in Wisconsin, you've been involved.
Mm-hmm.
And when they've lost, you have not been involved. What kind of responsibility and pressure does that put on you?
I mean, the science is still out there, but I know a lot of consultants would champion that they are the one through line. And I'm exactly that kind of person who would say that, yes, it's entirely me. Was it me or Barack Obama? It was probably me.
Speaking of which, are you going to go when he's in town?
Yeah, I mean, he's a great boss, charming Muslim from Kenya. Big fan. Definitely love to, say hi again and snap a couple photos for the cameras. And yeah, I mean, it's wonderful that obviously, as goes Wisconsin, so goes the nation. So it's very clear that by his presence, this is once again coming down to, a couple thousand votes.
Yeah, absolutely. So what, as someone who's didn't grow up here, has spent a lot of time here, has gone to all 72 counties, which a lot of us, I can't say that. What do you know about Wisconsinites that we don't know about ourselves?
That's a great question. I mean, I certainly felt incredibly welcomed to Wisconsin when I came here, even though the average skin color here is ranch. But
wow. So you've ever said that joke before?
Yes.
Okay.
Just mainly on the doing stand-up for Charlie. So what I think is unique is there is a level of state pride here that, again, whether you're red or blue, everyone bleeds green and gold. There is an embracing of stereotypes that is unique to this place. Like, yes, I like beer. Yes, I like brats. Yes, cheese is wonderful, and I unabashedly wear it on my head. And I can, find my wife wearing Zumbas at the bar in sweatpants, and you know what I mean? There's just there is a rarity and authenticity of Wisconsin that kind of cuts across everything else. And even to compare to other Midwestern states, I think this is unique.
Which is interesting because we were together last night watching your Wheel of Fortune episode, and having lived in California and New York, I obviously know how different Wisconsin is, but I've wondered how we compare how the experience of living here and that state pride and the amount of things I own, thanks to Debbie Brey, that have Wisconsin on them or made in the shape of is I don't even know if I could count them, between coasters and pillows and
quality
bakeware. I think pretty sure I have a cutting board that's in the shape of Wisconsin. Yeah. Sure. And I've joked in the past, well, how do you do this if you're Colorado? You're is this Iowa? Is this Utah? This is just a swear. I don't know. But Wisconsin, some of our states that are a little bit more distinct in their shape, we take a lot of pride in. And you were saying last night that in the time that you spent in other Midwestern states, you don't think it's replicated.
Yeah, and the distinctness of a shape like Florida is not necessarily as amenable. And I just think that there's I've been to 48 states now, and as you said, 72 counties here, and I've seen this great nation, and I come back to Wisconsin. I think that there is something about a place like Madison where you have the school pride, the state capital, the uniqueness of just the landscape of being between these two lakes. You have a major metropolis in Milwaukee that has its own history. And then just the salt of the earth of going and, seeing what the driftlands or something like that, driftless is like. And I guess that everyone just really, really loves it too. And it certainly welcomed you back with open arms.
Oh yeah. I mean, I can't imagine what I would be doing at 36 had I not left California. I certainly don't think I'd have my own radio show right now. Probably wouldn't be married and own a house either, if I'm being totally honest.
and Josh, can I just say, after saying all those nice things about Wisconsin, I think we need you on once a month just for a statewide ego fluff.
Yeah.
There you go.
There we go.
Well, a little fluffing too that was wonderful is I was in London for the Packer game, which we don't mention that much, but also performing with Charlie as a grand excuse to travel there. And we were on the tube, and you just see every stop Rodgers jerseys.
Yeah.
And we just invaded it in a way where you're just not going to get that for the Jacksonville Jaguars game. And I think that doubles down on, the shareholders sort of appeal and just everything else. It's not just about sports. It's an identity that is Wisconsinite.
Yeah. Absolutely. Our guest this whole hour is Josh Burstein, who is both a political strategist and a stand-up comedian. And I want to get more into the comedy aspect later in this hour. But as far as we should clarify, you're not employed by any of the campaigns this time around, as far as Tony Evers' campaign.
I am a creative mercenary for hire.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as someone who has worked on so many of these campaigns, takeaways as far as how it's going down, is it different this year than it's been in the past? Is there things that if you were in charge, you would have been doing differently?
Well,
I don't even know how much you've been paying attention, but I imagine you have emotional skin in the game. So I feel like you probably, more than other people who don't live in the state currently.
I probably was the only person watching the Democratic primary, live stream on Facebook from Brooklyn. Yeah. The thing you're seeing right now is a lot of familiar faces. I think the race most familiar to me would be the recall election and re-election in 2012, because something that could very easily happen is what is very Wisconsin is a traditionalist sort of stay the course attitude. And so they know their representatives, they know what they're getting in that traditional sense. So you could just as easily see Baldwin and Johnson remaining and Evers remaining in this cycle. So there's going to be an interesting maybe 10 to 12% of Evers Johnson voters, which defies a whole lot of logic in Washington, but doesn't surprise me as somebody who knows Wisconsin. And so, when I was looking at those primary debates, it seemed very clear to me that the most qualified person is Mandela. And then the biggest challenge is just how do you get a name ID as a sort of young buck out here?
And do you think he's been doing a good job with that from what you can tell? Or because I think that's what we've seen in the polls is the prediction of once they got to the general, how much he was going to be able to introduce himself versus have the Ron Johnson campaign introduce him on behalf of their version of who Mandela is.
Yeah, and he's got to kind of thread that needle in terms of all the comparisons he's going to get and all the unfair comparisons. Like he's going to be expected to be Obama, and he's going to be expected to be folksy enough to work everywhere but Milwaukee, but then also authentic to Milwaukee. And so I think that tightrope is a strategic question for a campaign. Where do you spend your time, right? Because it is really hard to get north of Wausau and dedicate 10 days on a bus, and it's a grueling grind, and you don't know what it means to show up for those 20 or 30 people who might be in the area versus some mega event that you could more easily do in Bayview. And so that's what I don't know enough about in terms of where that pie of that time is, but I sure know that if I were their campaign, I would just be getting on this show and as many other places that are local and showing up where people are. I think it's interesting. What I've noticed is he does have some interesting hobbies that has been embraced by, at least his campaign of wearing socks and Crocs, which I find egregious. And I don't know if that was the vote that needed to be courted. But it is true to form, like that this guy is a marathon runner, which also may not be the most popular thing as an activity here in town. But he also loves, CSA, right? Like he can geek out on farming. And I don't think that people would automatically know that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, our guest this whole hour is Josh Burstein. Stick with us. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
President Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election.
Collectively, Republicans got 1.661 million votes, 51,000 more votes than Trump got.
He exhausted his cases. He exhausted the court challenges.
All the Republicans voted for Trump the way they voted for the assembly candidates, he would have won.
It was not rigged. It was not stolen. Donald Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election. It's really clear.
This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at p4ppc.org.
Listen Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.
It is the Monday after the first Packers game, and I think everyone right now is licking their wounds.
But I do love that you're leading with The Bears Still Suck as the intro song. I mean, we're already on to week 2.
Why are we not good at the season opener?
Listen to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey right here on the Shaw 101 FM and WAUK 540 AM.
Dueling Tangents with Luke and Brian.
I'm really trying hard not to go insane from the mind screw that is this situation with the I was going to say the GAB, but now it's the WEC, which was audited by the LAB, and then it's now screwed up by the GOP, and we're all SOL. Good for us. Congratulations.
Look at all those acronyms. Yeah.
We're the winners.
Tune in for Dueling Tangents every weekday at 2.
Here's your updated forecast on the Shaw. High of 42 this afternoon, under overcast skies, winds out of the northwest, 20 to 25 miles an hour. Overcast skies again tonight, lows dip down to about 30. Mainly clear tomorrow, high temperatures reach up to 44. A blend of clouds and sun Thursday, with daytime highs approaching 52. 65 Friday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 43 degrees.
I should laugh, but I cry, because your love has passed me by. You took me by surprise. You didn't realize.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. Our guest this hour is Josh Burstein, who was a political strategist, now is a stand-up comedian.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of there's a crossover with both, but you left politics to really double down on performing, writing, and comedy, despite having a pretty impressive resume in the political world.
Mm-hmm.
And so why?
Sure. Well, I think since before even the era of Jon Stewart, I've wanted to be the first Asian Jewish correspondent on The Daily Show. And for some reason, it seemed more realistic for me to work in the White House than pursue comedy.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I think it took a pandemic to really slow me down from being able to do the kind of political work and storytelling on the ground that I wanted to do. And then it was just, comic relief. It made sense for me to go all in on being more creative, and it's resonated with people, and I've gotten enough external validators, including people within the late night community. So I'm just gonna try and impact through entertainment, which I think is a really effective way, other than like stock PSAs with a white backdrop and the things we all tune out.
Mm-hmm. And because I have a similar experience of that, and I want to save that for the next segment just because we have more time to really dive into it. But it's interesting because do you miss politics? Or do you miss campaigns? Do you miss the adrenaline rush of, typically right now, everyone we know who's working either campaigning for themselves or on a campaign or in some kind of job where this is go time, right? This is, we have 3 weeks, all hands on deck, not a lot of sleep, anything you can do, because every single vote that more you can get matters, right? And so do you miss that?
I miss the camaraderie.
Okay.
I miss being in the trenches with people who are mission aligned, going in the same direction. I think the just sense of purpose that you have working a campaign and, having a connection on a doors with a potential voter and really actually helping, person by person. The, sort of magic of consequence, just that you're putting out some good karma in the universe, whether or not you are misguided in which side or which candidate, whatever. It's just, I think that everybody who's involved in politics in a very meaningful way is doing something special for themselves and selflessly.
Interesting. And you feel like that on both sides?
I think that at least in their head and their truth, it's noble-ish. But there's no monopoly of bad ideas or bad people to either party, is kind of what I'm saying.
Wasn't that Hannah Gadsby's hey man, you don't have a monopoly on the human condition. Women can also be corrupted. It's just they don't have as many opportunities to
We can't do
corrupt.
it at scale.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's because you didn't start with comedy.
Mhm.
You started with politics. And what do you feel like the most creative? Like, which campaigns did you really get to flex your comedic and creativity, like your comedic ideas and your creative ideas? Like, where did you really start to be like, oh, this is something that I could do that's not just in the confines of politics?
So in 2012, I left LA, came back to Wisconsin, and interestingly enough, like left Hollywood where I was trying to write and direct, and then got to write and direct all the actors coming through down the final stretch, right? So here I am getting to play Sorkin.
So are
writing.
they actors?
What do you mean?
Like for like political, you mean for like political campaigns, or which actors are you talking about?
Like Olivia Munn. Like coming
for
through,
like commercial.
like,
Okay.
Yeah. So
like
it's
actual actors who were like, let's
Yeah.
do a PSA. Got it.
And so I think that there was the benefit of just things happening too fast down the stretch and Wisconsin becoming important and Chicago realizing it. So there wasn't a lot of oversight. And so I'm just like writing a walk and talk with Bradley Whitford and getting to do all these opportunities that that was definitely sort of like what gave me an addiction to campaigns and trying to double down on getting to be creative in that and super serve that niche rather than, I don't know, a lot of people get rewarded by doing one job well by then having to manage a ton of people doing that job, which is a very different job. So I just always have wanted to focus on the creative, to persuade, which used to be called propaganda. So I specialize in propaganda. And when I was in the administration, Obama emphasized to Tom Perez, the labor secretary, that you needed to bolster your digital program. And we started rolling out some of the most major significant policies of his final year in office. And, you know, off of a 1 hour briefing with all these experts, I had to come up with a creative, you know, launch strategy and got to, you know, execute on that. And that's how the policy would be introduced. And so that's when it was just like, okay, this is really special in terms of how we can craft a message that then is going to persuade how other outlets are going to cover it and how Americans as a whole understand how this helps them. And that is better done from an entertainment standpoint than, you know, death by 1,000 edits from, you know, people, old white dudes in Washington that are built to mitigate risk and like have their own agendas.
What was the creative idea?
You know, some of them were just coming down to like pretty simple concepts of, you know, let's roll out the silica ruling for OSHA health and safety that I think back in the era of FDR, they were trying to do something. It's taken 80 years. So let's get like a generational story and tell it from their perspective instead of having, you know, Biden show up and eat ice cream with it. You know, it's like, let's make it personal.
We've done that.
Yeah.
I don't know who eats more ice cream, Joe Biden or Tony Evers, but someone probably has the answer to that. All right, we're going to take another break. This is As Goes Wisconsin.
I didn't realize that you were laughing. Time goes slowly, but carries on. And now the best years.
The Shaw 101 FM, your fix for progressive talk. From Muskego to Pewaukee, always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
Hi, folks. This is Kirk Bankstad at the Minocqua Brewing Company, and I am proud to introduce you to Choice, our new pink grapefruit flavored hard seltzer. Choice was made in collaboration with Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin, and 5% of the proceeds from every can goes to support them and their fight for reproductive freedom. Choice hard seltzer tastes great and comes in at only 105 calories per can. Go to our website, MinocquaBrewingCompany.com, to find where you can buy Choice hard seltzer.
The Devil's Advocates.
Aaron Mostovsky, who rioted at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, was dressed as Captain Caveman. QAnon shaman meets Law and Order?
Right. I mean, he pulled it off a whole lot better than Aaron Mostovsky.
Well, let me read a quote from the judge in this case. I hope you'll leave some of this fantasy world behind. Mostovsky was sentenced to 8 months in prison.
Looking at the guy, he might be one who loses his mattress on the first day. Breaking news.
I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. In New York, French cement company Lafarge pleaded guilty to paying millions of dollars to the Islamic State group so that a plant in Syria could remain open.
Lafarge made a deal with the devil. Foreign terrorists who pledged to, and in fact did, harm the United States, its people, and its national security. And they did it for profit.
Brey is the U.S. attorney in eastern New York. Lafarge agreed to pay criminal fines of roughly $91 million and forfeit an additional $687 million for a total penalty of about $778 million.
In the summer of 2013, Lafarge and LCS began to negotiate to purchase raw materials from ISIS-controlled suppliers and eventually entered into revenue-sharing agreements with ISIS.
The payments were designed to ensure the continued operation of the plant. I'm Ed Donahue.
We tried Dynovite nutritional supplement, and after a couple of weeks, we noticed a big difference. Our little Gizmo's coat was shinier, and there was a lot less scratching and shedding.
My dog smelled and scratched constantly. We bathed and sprayed her, took her to the vet, but no results. Now, a little Dynovite in her food helps Bella keep her beautiful coat with no scratching or smell.
Happier, healthier with every bite. Over 1 million pets helped with Dynovite.
Hi, this is Joe Cordell with the law firm Cordell & Cordell. When the prospect of divorce becomes a reality, you need a partner that you can count on. If you're a man in this situation, consider contacting Cordell & Cordell. We've helped men navigate complex legal matters for 30 years.
Contact Cordell & Cordell to schedule an appointment with one of our firm's Atlanta area attorneys. 404-793-0000. Online at CordellCordell.com. 1 Glen Lake Parkway Northeast, Suite 975, Atlanta, Georgia 30328.
For Civic Media, I'm Jane Matnier with your headlines. The tight race for Wisconsin's U.S. Senate seat has seen an influx of fundraising, with Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes' campaign outraising Senator Ron Johnson by nearly $8 million between July and October. According to the Federal Elections Commission quarterly reports, between July 21st and October 30th, Mandela Barnes for Wisconsin raised $19.5 million, while Ron Johnson for Senate Incorporated raised $11.6 million. The numbers don't include outside spending by political action committees, which advertising analytics firm Ad Impact estimates nearly $150 million will be spent on this Senate race alone. According to Open Secrets, outside groups have spent over $35 million on ads opposing Barnes and over $27 million in ads against Johnson. You're listening to The Shaw, 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. Our guest this hour is Josh Burstein, who was a political strategist and is now currently a stand-up comedian. Both together. How do you
Still in
prefer
the
it?
democracy-saving business, but doing it through funny things.
And it's funny because that was a Bo Burnham from his special called Inside.
And if you haven't seen it, you have to. It will be the only thing I show in a time capsule in 40 years of explaining what COVID was like.
Yes, and it was genius. And that song specifically is, I think, at the cross section between those of us who, because I put myself in the same category as you, who I don't kneel at the altar of comedy in the way that like Conan O'Brien does. Like when I've listened to his podcast, when he talks about
we're the original philosophers.
Yes,
we're just so courageous.
There's certain people who are comedians and they just love to make people laugh.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, I feel like I use comedy for a purpose of educating. It's like it's entertainment, but it's also through making information more palatable.
Processing information through comedy, like data shows that it actually is the most effective medium. If you're going to put 60 minutes, whether or not you care about that issue or where you are on the spectrum with it, you're going to retain it with comedy twice as
Yes.
easily or something.
And so, but there's also, I think, what's funny about that song and the irony about it is the fact that like I think there is a line that, but I still get all the attention, and like the aspect of, well, I'm doing this great noble thing, and yet it's still somewhat self-serving. And so the idea that this is a more worthwhile pursuit than working on a campaign, than working for a nonprofit, than community organizing. And I'm not saying that they have to be mutually exclusive. I don't think that they are, but it's an interesting, like, are we actually changing people's minds? And is there inherent value, or is this just a thing that we're telling ourselves because it's fun to do?
Well, we could do a whole another hour on burnout with campaigns. And that's another reason why I stepped into comedy. But I know whenever I was on the campaign, I wasn't going to be able to watch Breaking Bad or some other super intense Oscar movie. I needed just sitcoms for comic relief. And then I did a show 2 days after the Buffalo shooting in Buffalo. And there was a cloud of just stress, but people wanted some release. And so I'm not just going to do like fart jokes there, but I'm also not going to, get on my soapbox and tell this city how to feel as someone not authentically there. So it is really interesting what, the quote that really always resonates with me is Stephen Colbert, who said, when you're laughing, you're not afraid. And I think that that's really one of the most important comforts that comedy can do, which is why a bunch of old people go to bed listening to the news, which is usually scary, but in the way of headlines on network TV. And it's the best way for them to take in some of the information, even though those people don't consider themselves journalists or news people.
So you didn't really answer my question as far as the inherent value. And so you're feeling like so you're coming down that, yes, there is inherent value in this, in the spectrum of what we could be spending our time doing. Because I think about this from the standpoint of, I think in later years now, Jon Stewart, who I think is both like a icon and probably an idol of both of ours, looking back and being like, did we really change anyone's mind? Did we really make a difference? We certainly entertain people, but how much of the stuff that we do often just feeds the echo chamber versus actually making an impact?
Yeah. Well, everyone's good and snarky on Twitter now, and I don't know if that's healing the world. So I guess the spoiler is, I don't think it can save the world, but it can help with the pain.
Okay.
And, as I sip this Lucas de Lukewarm coffee, apparently coffee doesn't make you less tired. It just makes you not listen to the receptors that tell you you're tired. And so maybe that is the good medicine of comedy, allowing you to take in a little bit more information, allowing you to hold a little more space to listen to a different perspective. If I'm going out into Brown County and doing comedy and mention Obama and Biden in a lot of respects, half the people there are ready to shout, "Let's go, Brandon." But because we're in the context of, I'm telling you jokes, we're here to have a good time, and I'm just giving you my perspective, take it or leave it. I'm not going to try and change you overnight. But I did just Trojan horse a bunch of information in a way that you would not get in your echo chamber, and I think that is a powerful way of delivering messages versus, it's we're not superheroes.
Yeah. So with your departure from working on campaigns, and because there is such a wide variety of types of comedy, are you mostly focused on doing stand-up, sketches? Like what is like the ideal outcome in this pursuit for you right now?
Most deliberately, I'm in New York right now because I want to work in late night, specifically as a correspondent on The Daily Show or any other new format that allows me to produce, write, and work in front of the camera. And one of the big reasons is because of the work I've done in Wisconsin, right? Like I've spent so much time going to the furthest middle, talking to, first time Trump voter who's going to vote for Biden, or people who are impacted by the ACA, or any number of like the actual impacts of policies, and telling those stories authentically. And so Jordan Klepper does something absolutely wonderful, going into the Dragon's Den and pointing out absurdities. I think that the different thing that I can do, because I'm maxed out on this political acumen, is provide the safety for, sitting politicians to be a little more loose, knowing that I'm not going to like do gotcha journalism and make them look bad.
Yeah.
And go into a place where, unlike Klepper, I'm gonna like listen it out. We can do a beer summit, and even if I disagree with you, we're gonna find connection points, and I'll find a funny way to do that that's with them and not at them.
Yeah. Our guest this hour is Josh Burstein, who's a political strategist and stand-up comedian and digital comedian, I would say, as far as also
Ninja
making
Guru Sherpa.
Yeah. And so where do you feel like what you've learned about comedy, and like how like coming full circle back into what do you think you've learned from that, and how messaging works, and has it made, if you'd ever choose to work on campaigns again, like bringing that creative energy and what you've learned by pursuing comedy this year, does it all come full circle, or do you feel like they are different entities?
It's definitely all cumulative. I mean, what is a stump speech if not stand up without good jokes?
Sometimes there's good jokes.
I think one of the tactics I would take is just understanding how to architect a punchline, right? Like you really want to draw more people in through a story, and then stick the landing with something that's compelling, whether that actually had to make you laugh or make you think. We're all fighting for attention right now, harder now than ever. And I think the same tactics that would make a decent TikTok or make, a good 30-minute stump speech are exactly the same things that I'd be doing in comedy or politics.
That's interesting. I think about that a lot whenever I'm scrolling through TikTok, of how funny people are and how much they actually, while they're not necessarily professional comedians who are pursuing comedy, how like the structure of a joke and putting the funniest part at the end. And because so much of TikTok is like, it's not actually even saying the joke out loud, it's even how they decide to write it.
Mm-hmm.
And do you feel like we're getting funnier
As a people?
Yeah.
I think people who are funny are getting rewarded by the algorithm for being funny.
Oh, that's interesting.
Or we're all learning the same types of communication. You know what I mean? Like there's millennial humor, there's Gen Z humor, there's Twitter humor, which tends to be TikTok humor from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And
certainly that's true on Instagram. I ask because I feel like when you look at fashion from the 90s or whatever, especially when you're a child who's largely being told this is what you're going to wear because this is what access we have to brick and mortar stores, and the fashion acumen of the general population has increased with the internet, right? Of like being able to shop, be able to look at outfits and fashion blogs and all this stuff. And with this new communication style of like, if it's raising the acumen of like people's ability to communicate, because there's not everyone, but so many people are online. And so that's where where that question came from is are we all just a little bit funnier or appreciate humor in a different way because of the fact that we're all online in this way and hearing those kinds of jokes? And you turn on Netflix and the amount of stand-up, and like stand-up is having a renaissance right now as far as just because of social media. If we have more humor in our lives, if it's making all of us either funnier and or appreciate humor more.
I would agree on the consumption part.
Okay.
And yeah, there are just more people doing stand-up nationally right now than the people doing the same tight five from the 80s over and over in the Comedy Cellar of New York. The mediums are interesting to me in terms of like training yourself out of what might be a good sketch 5 years ago no longer has a platform, right? Like Funny or Die or College Humor doesn't exist there, and now it's you better be making it 30 seconds or less, right? And then maybe that changes, and now we want all 3-minute plus. Or you have to make a 9-hour documentary about a murderer or something to get people to pay attention. And it's just algorithms make us conditioned to consume the humor we want. And it does seem like there's a lot more out there for every flavor of type of humor.
It's funny because I feel like that opens up an entire different box that we don't have time to get into today. But before the show, I saw a interview with Hassan Minhaj, who I would say is in the same category of.
Was it with Colin Samir, the podcast?
Maybe.
Okay.
Was it the one he was talking about the difference between being an artist and the algorithm?
Yes, that was great.
Do you want to summarize it?
You do it.
Okay. So basically, if you don't know who Hassan Minhaj is, check out I haven't seen his new special, but supposedly it's incredible. But he is in the same vein, I would say, of the category of comedians who is trying to save the world with comedy. Is right. I would put them in there. And he was talking about the difference between, I think, even an artist and maybe let's say a content creator. And an artist being someone who needs to get this out. It needs to get out of my brain, out of my heart. And this message, this short film, this documentary, this joke, like there is a driving purpose of I need to get this out versus he was saying the algorithm, I'll say content creator, of feeding the machine and adjusting what you're doing based on the algorithm, based on how much engagement I got, how many likes I got, how much did this get shared. And I don't think there's a value statement of one being better than the other, but there is a difference as far as the motivation of what you're creating. And I do think it's an interesting distinction. We have to go to a break, so think about what you're going to say and don't forget. All right, this is As Goes Wisconsin. Our guest this hour has been Josh Burstein, who will still be here when we come back.
So all you folks out there, if you haven't registered to vote, register to vote, get ready to vote. There are so many things on the ballot this November at our freedom, our liberty, and our way of life. But we'll get to all of that this evening.
The Paul Revere Show with Mark Thompson. Listen Mondays 7 to 8 p.m. on the Shaw 101 FM and WAUK 540 AM.
From research to results, Rank Seed is rooted in technology. It starts with good genetics, and Rank Seed evaluates more than 80,000 data points of breeding material. By planting plots throughout the Midwest and Great Plains, we expose our genetics to a wide range of environments, which helps us select the best varieties. We then utilize the latest technologies, including robotics and color sorters, to ensure the highest germination and the best quality of seed, tirelessly striving to better serve our customers. Rank Seed. Results since 1846.
This local musical interlude is brought to you by Max Inc. Radio. Dana Perry.
What am I fearing? Why do I worry at all? 'Cause I can feel that.
Listen to Max Inc. Radio every Saturday and Sunday, 6 p.m. to midnight. Download the podcast at maxincradio.com. We are local music.
On the Shaw. High of 42 this afternoon, under overcast skies, winds out of the northwest, 20 to 25 miles an hour. Overcast skies again tonight, lows dip down to about 30. Mainly clear tomorrow, high temperatures reach up to 44. A blend of clouds and sun Thursday, with daytime highs approaching 52. 65 Friday. For Civic Media, I'm meteorologist Eric Height. Currently, it's 43.
We are going to wrap up today's show with our guest who's been here the whole hour, my good friend, Josh Burstein, comedian, political strategist. And so, final serious question, and then I want to get back to Wheel of Fortune because,
sure,
you know, you won last night. And
Yes.
people were very dismayed that I didn't know the rules of Wheel of Fortune.
Breaking news.
Yeah. But when you approach content now, when you're not working on a campaign, how much of how much overlap or how much are you still thinking like a political strategist when you're deciding what kind of TikTok joke to make?
I mean, working in Wisconsin for Obama was transformative, and being on that, defining whatever new media was to become digital, and now just being a content director, making digital content in all different types of ways. It's now a triage to what you were saying about like Hassan in the algorithm versus art. And I look at it like mission or creative or performance is what is the priority for a lot of people. And so for me, I'm thinking about the mission of impact and messaging, and what is the creative delivery system? What is the humor hook that's going to get more people to actually think about that? And the last thing that I loathe is having to always stay on top of the newest thing. Like, oh shoot, I should have been more active on Be Real now because I'm going to get left behind because I didn't even park my username or whatever, you know? And it's just like, I'm never going to be better than a 19-year-old at this stuff, but you can be better at like the experiencing and messaging and understanding human behavior and why you probably don't want to talk about climate change with Al Gore's voice and instead refer to it as temperature weirding, because no one denies temperature weirding out there. It's getting weirder.
It is getting weirder.
Yeah.
Definitely weirder. All right. Well, then to wrap it up, you won $17,000 on Wheel of Fortune.
That's accurate.
How did this even happen?
You know, I needed some moving costs to the East Coast and wanted to farm some TikToks. And it's just like an LA bucket list, just a silly thing. And
Was it always specifically you wanted to be on Wheel of Fortune, or was it just being on a game show?
I would have done Deal or No Deal. That seemed like the most straightforward, easy money option. It was that actually a casting director reached out for a different game show. And then I decided, why not? And then why not hedge my bets? And the first thing that came to mind was Wheel, because I've been crushing it at Wordle. Let's give it a spin. And
no pun intended or intended. I don't know.
Who knows? Yeah.
What was it like? What was Pat Sajak like? What was Vanna White like? So many questions.
Sure. I don't know. Did I sign NDAs? Shoot. No, Vanna still got it. She 40 years, crazy.
That's wild.
And Pat was incredibly helpful and encouraging in between.
He was very
takes.
impressed with you.
Yeah.
He found you to be very interesting and told you should have your own sitcom. So high praise.
That is now the perfect clip before every single pitch for any pending sitcom. And hopefully there's some, ambitious lit agent that is trying to find my contact information. So I'm here to field it.
Were you nervous?
I was nervous about like flubbing a really basic answer.
Okay.
But I was ready to make an arse of myself because that was sort of like the point.
Yeah.
And so as long as I got to, test out a little bit of my stand up with Pat for like just the funny chumminess of it. And then, once it started, I'm like, I'm gonna win this thing. Let's go. And I really kind of got that sort of killer instinct on the wheel.
Josh, I think people would be surprised by the fact that these kinds of game shows use casting agents.
Well, I think the main thing is just, do you understand how to play this game? Do you have a personality and interesting story for Pat to chat about? And are you going to crumble under the pressure of having to spin this heavy wheel?
Was it heavy?
It was it's a different weight than you'd expect, whatever that means.
So you really had to
you give it some oomph.
How much strategy did you have to try to avoid going bankrupt? Or were you just spin it?
I think the reason that you don't get to play it a bunch of times is you probably could just
Start to
figure out these things. But no, I just was whipping it as good as I can, left-handed, because I'm lefty. Yeah.
Any other big takeaways from being on Wheel of Fortune?
I just don't know where to go from here. I don't know if there's a circuit, or maybe touring the, bar trivia, around Madison. And
do you feel like you'd make a good game show host?
I could host.
I feel like you could be a good host.
Yeah.
Seems like a good gig. Hard to get, but once you got it, you're like, well, I'm just going to work 2 days a week for half the year and film a week's worth of
let's
shows
just have some fun, and let's just
talk to people, rinse, repeat.
Do the chummy part. So does that mean that I need to master Jeopardy or another version where I can, work my way through expert play?
Probably. I'm trying to think, what do you think I would be terrible at Jeopardy. I'm trying to think of the game shows that are around still on air where I feel like I could be competitive. I wish Guts was still a thing.
Legends of the Hidden Temple, I was about to say.
The Nickelodeon, the mid-90s Nickelodeon game shows. I really wish those were still here. I feel like I could dominate some children.
Yeah.
Guts. It was Guts, Legend of the... What was the one with the slime?
So you want to play against children, you don't want to have the adult version of Guts, which I guess is the Ninja Warrior stuff. Okay.
I would be awful at Ninja Warrior.
No.
That seems so hard. I have zero upper body strength. So anything that would require me to actually pull my entire body weight up onto a ledge, I'm in the water. Absolutely.
Would you do a wipeout or a floor is lava kind of situation where you're going to kind of definitely get
hurt?
Yeah.
Bruised.
But gacked or whatever, there's something involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
That seems fun. That's like a birthday party of a game where you might win $30,000.
All right, Josh Burstein, is there anything you'd like to plug while you're here before we wrap up today's show?
I would just appreciate a follow on the internets at JBurstOFA on Instagram, JBurst on Twitter, and the TikTok. Josh Burstein on LinkedIn, Josh Burstein on Friendster. Anything else?
Yeah. Still MySpace, that one?
Maspache, yes.
Yeah, exactly.
You'd be in my top 8.
All right. Well, that will do it for us today. Come back again tomorrow where Ryan Mason will be here doing his best Ron Johnson and Tony Evers impression. You don't want to miss it. This is As Goes Wisconsin. We'll see you tomorrow.